with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, February 8th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dr. MarkAlain Dery, infectious disease doctor, director of Access Health LA, I should say Louisiana, on the state of our fight against this pandemic. Meanwhile, Senate impeachment trial tomorrow, and the Democratic leadership wants it done quick, so they refuse to call any witnesses. Meanwhile, Democrats tee up the COVID relief. Bernie versus Biden on the $15 minimum wage. It's Dem v. Dem on the means testing of COVID relief. Meanwhile, Biden administration getting high marks on COVID response as the number of vaccinations has now topped the number of new infections. South Africa, however, says that the AstraZeneca vaccination not effective with the South African strain. Meanwhile, the UK strain spreading rapidly in the U.S. The doctor we're speaking to today will be able to tell us more information about that. Meanwhile, the Biden administration to announce it's rejoining the UN Human Rights Council. And also reverses the Trump terrorist designation for Houthis, clearing the way for humanitarian aid in Yemen. It's not abolished, but ICE about to be severely restricted by the Biden administration. Voting starts on a historic fight to unionize Amazon's first workplace, and it is taking place in the Deep South. Rest in peace, Karen Lewis, former president of the Chicago Teachers Union, passed away today after a long struggle with brain cancer. The International Criminal Court rules it has jurisdiction over Israel's war crimes, and protests rage in Myanmar against the coup. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us on a Monday. Also joining me on this Monday, as she does every day, every weekday, I should say, Emma Vigilant. Emma, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing well.
Recovering from the Super Bowl. We will get into that more after in the second half of the show.
Oh, great.
I know you've got a lot to say about that.
Sure.
I know that you're. It's been a little bit of rough road for you, but we will talk about that later because we've got this interview with Dr. MarkAlain Dery. I recorded it on Friday evening, and he is one of the top epidemiologists in the country. Was intimately involved in the Ebola fight. We've had him on the program before. Everything he told me in April bore out incredibly well. Particularly in terms of the airborne nature. This is before it was really established. He was talking about what they suspected at that time. And he told me there were three things in terms of the transmissibility of this: air, and air. and that has certainly borne out. Meanwhile, impeachment starts tomorrow, or I should say the impeachment trial starts tomorrow in the Senate. Here is Senator Ron Johnson, up for re-election in Wisconsin, with his theory about what happened on that day in the insurrection that took place in the Capitol.
I mean, you've been asking these questions about who knew what when about the January 6th siege. You haven't gotten any information. Have you gotten information about the intelligence that they have now that would warrant this kind of protection around the Capitol building?
No, our staff was briefed by some FBI briefers last week, and they got no information whatsoever. And again, this is a month later, and so this is how, by the way, this is how rumors spread. This is how conspiracy theories get spun up by government not being straightforward and not getting information that it's aware of, that it has access to, and make that public right away. I'm for transparency, and right now there is very little transparency other than Stephen Sun's letter to Speaker Pelosi, which I truly appreciate. I wish the former Sergeant at Arms, I wish the current Sergeant at Arms would also lay out what they did, what they're aware of. I wish other people would come forward. The American public deserves to know what happened. We need this information. We need it now.
So you are not getting that information, and yet you have an impeachment trial coming up next week. You say that this is partly all part of the plan, a deflection. Tell me about that.
Well, again, I've always believed the Russian hoax was a diversion operation from the corruption that was occurring within certainly the FBI and potentially some of our intelligence agencies. You have to kind of ask the question, what is this impeachment all about? We now know that 45 Republican senators believe it's unconstitutional. Is this another diversion operation? Is this meant to deflect away from potentially what the speaker knew and when she knew it?
Only 45?
I don't know, but I'm suspicious.
It's a false flag.
Now, I know that we introduced this clip as Maria Bartiromo and Ron Johnson as if they were having an actual interview, but are we sure that we're not watching a playlet, like a short one-act play where Maria Bartiromo is playing the role of, or I should say that Ron Johnson's playing the role of the Michael Lindell from the My Pillow guy?
It does sound
and
like him.
Maria Bartiromo is playing the part of Lou Dobbs? Is that what's going on here?
Well, they have to fill that void somehow for the programming on Fox.
So this guy has us believing that he, as a senator, cannot find out what's going on with the FBI, doesn't know why there's security around the perimeter of the Capitol, thinks that maybe this was all a false flag situation for Nancy Pelosi to cover up some, I don't know what. Man, I mean, is there a doctor in the house?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's parroting the line that we're hearing out of the Oregon Republican state legislatures, too. This is a disease that's infected many parts of the Republican Party, not just Johnson. Indeed.
All right, well, we've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking to MarkAlain Dery, one of the top epidemiologists in the country. We'll be right back after this. Hey, folks, today's program, it is sponsored in part by Freshly. Freshly, there's a great story that I've told about Freshly advertising on this show. It is a service basically where Freshly chefs take care of your meals a few nights a week, take the pressure off you. Well, the fact that they're advertising on the show now takes the pressure off from me. About a year or two ago, maybe, I don't know, I have no sense of time, but I think it was before COVID. So it was probably about 2 years ago. My mom is getting on in age. We're a little bit concerned about her, particularly at that time. And so my sisters and I wanted to make sure that she was eating properly, and we chose Freshly as a service to send her meals. However, we knew that she would not let us pay for a service or anything, really. She didn't want us to pay for it. And she would have been like, I don't need anything and this and that. So we told her that Freshly was advertising on the show and that they were giving me free food to send to my mom. And my mom, she bought it. And then and on top of which, for months, she would say, every time we would talk, she would like, the food is so great. I am telling all my friends about this. I am so glad that they're advertising on your show because they're so. And I have to say yes. But the long and short of it is, the food is fantastic. Enough so much so that you would send it to your mom. And then just coincidentally, they started advertising on the show. And so now I'm not lying to my mother anymore.
That's good.
So that's good too. Freshly offers chef-made, nutrient-packed, delicious meals delivered, like I say, straight to your door. No cooking required. Your meals arrived cooked and fresh every week. You can keep them in your fridge, stocked up. Ordering is super easy. You go to freshly.com. You choose from over 30 meals. They got stuff like steak peppercorn. That's one of my mom's favorites, actually.
I have tried that steak peppercorn. Pretty good.
The food is really delicious.
Yeah.
Sausage baked penne. They have chicken pesto bowl. They can fit your lifestyle. They have all sorts of planned meals. They have plans like you have multiple meals or a couple meals. You can figure it out. Super easy. And now our listeners can try Freshly for just $6.16 per meal. Your meals are ready to heat. You can enjoy them in about 3 or 4 minutes it takes. Right now, Freshly is offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/majority. Stop stressing about dinner. Go to freshly.com/majority for $40 off your first 2 orders. That's freshly.com/majority. $40 off your first 2 orders. Also, today's program, our advertiser wants me to tell you, new year, new you. I guess that's a play on New Year. In 2021, look, this is a little bit awkward for me to do this ad every time, but
yeah, especially when we're in person together.
Yes, I know it's a little bit easier when I'm alone.
Remote,
I'm just talking into but look, New Year, make a commitment. You don't just wash your hands every time you go. Go the extra mile. Wash your butt. All right, brand new Hello Tushy 3.0. It is a modern bidet attachment. It's finally here. It's stylish. It's eco-friendly, easy to install, super easy, and very affordable. Sometime during the whole COVID mess, Kyle tells me he got a bidet. He's like, it's changed my life. And I was like, I'll try it. I wasn't going to go full on, like, bidet
installation.
Order it from Japan, that type of thing. And I got the original Tushy, the 2.0, and it was super easy to try it out. I mean, if you can put on a toilet seat cover, you can basically do this. Super easy. There's you don't need any new plumbing. You don't need any new electricity. Requires no electricity for that matter. It is super easy. It cuts your toilet paper use by 80%. And the 3.0 version doesn't just cleanse your butt, but it also cleans itself before and after it's used with the Smart Spray automatic self-cleaning nozzle. Sanitation's simple. It's got a schmutz shield, they call it. It offers easy cleaning. The knobs are naturally antimicrobial. Plus, every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. You can upgrade to the new 3.0 model if you're already hooked on the original Hello Tushy, or if you're new to the revolution, joins millions of happy customers right now and have a clean butt with every flush. Never worry about running out of toilet paper again. It really is. I mean, I don't want to get explicit here, but it really is. It's a great feeling. You understand why so much of the world uses bidets. Go to hellotushy.com. I mean, you think about it, like our toilet technology has not changed in like 70 years in this country. 80.
No, and toilet paper is actually not a great model for it. It's not very hygienic at all.
Not hygienic. I don't want to get on my high horse about this. I don't want to get on my throne about this. Go to exactly. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Get 10% off plus free shipping. The special offer for our listeners. Go to hellotushy, TUSHY.com/majority for 10% off hellotushy.com/majority. As always, we'll put all of these links in our show notes, YouTube, podcast. And don't forget, it is your support that makes this show possible. If you want to support the show, go to jointhemajorityreport.com. Your memberships make this show possible. That's where 97.3% of our revenue comes from our members. You make it possible, and you get you support the free show. You get the free show free of commercials. You would never hear this again, and you get the fun half. So why not? All right, we're going to take we're going to throw now to this interview that we did just on Friday. We ready to roll that, Brendan? So I want to welcome back to the show Dr. MarkAlain Dery. He is an infectious disease physician and epidemiologist with Access Health Louisiana, where he serves as the medical director of the infectious diseases and chief innovation officer. And of course, Access Health Louisiana, I believe, is the largest Medicaid providing clinic system in Louisiana. Dr. Dery, also a founder of the community radio station New Orleans, 102.3 FM, which I think at one point may have been an Air America station or pretty close, if I'm not mistaken. He is also a host of two daily podcasts about COVID, funded by federal grants from the U.S. Health Resources and Service Administration. One is called COVID Noise Filter, 10 minutes a day, and the other one is streams daily at Facebook at 5 p.m. We'll put links to those, of course, in our YouTube and podcast descriptions. Dr. Dery, welcome back to the show. We've got a lot to catch up with. I think it's been, I can't remember exactly, a couple of months. Let's start first, and I know you have some graphics for us. But at this point, we've got three major things going on, it seems. One is, or the two biggest ones are the mutations and the vaccination. There's subsets to those things, but it's almost a race, it seems like, between getting everybody vaccinated and preventing the COVID-19 from mutating. Before we get there to those two topics, let's just go back to basic best practices. And the status of where we are right in this moment, because it feels like we have plateaued in terms of the number of infections. We're on the other side of Christmas and New Year's. We got Super Bowl, obviously, right behind us, but I suspect that not as nearly in the same implications as those other holidays. So where are we in the pandemic?
Right. And also, let me just add to that, we are also going to have Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So there's going to be a little local super spreading event coming up, because Mardi Gras, I think, is 2 weeks from this coming Tuesday. So where are we? So we are through that dark winter. I think the last time we had talked, I had mentioned that there was a dark winter that was going to be coming. A lot of epidemiologists had predicted it. It was an easy prediction to make. You were going to have Thanksgiving, travel associated with that. Then, of course, Christmas and New Year's and the travel associated with that. We saw the predicted peaks, and we're now on the downside of it. So I think that with the new administration and having really, really competent and really good people on the team, I think that I would have said prior, if we didn't have variants, I would have said that we're very likely on the downside of all this. Moving forward, it looks as though with the vaccinations, with a very competent coronavirus task force team on board with the Biden and Harris administration, we're likely going to be moving out of this slowly but surely. But now we have these variants. And in one of the graphs that I sent, I showed you how in the UK, one of these variants, the B117, which we've seen here, they don't like us to refer to it as the UK strain or the South Africa strain or whatever, because just like we probably wouldn't want it to be called the New Orleans strain, because there is some stigma associated with it. So I usually refer to it by the number and then its place of origin. So B117 originated from the UK. We've seen that here in the US, particularly here in New Orleans, but certainly in Los Angeles as well. But on one of the graphs that I sent, you could see that it emerged out of southern England in Leeds. And within 5 to 6 weeks, it became the dominant strain. So all of those various variants, they all have collected the same mutation. They all, from an evolutionary perspective, it's really fascinating. They all emerged individually, but they all emerged and evolved into the same type of mutation, in which that spike protein, that protein that sticks off the edge of the coronavirus, it has a 20-degree rotation in the spike. And that 20-degree rotation in the spike makes it fit easier in the ACE2 receptor. So imagine like a key getting in a door, and it feels kind of sticky, and you kind of have to get it in and out to, that's the wild type virus, the one that was circulating. Imagine a key that slips right in the door and you're able to open it up. That's what we're seeing right now. So that 20-degree rotation fits into that ACE2 receptor very easy, which allows a much better likelihood of being able to attack, infect that cell, and then transmit to other people.
Okay, and let's circle back on those mutations, because I have so many questions surrounding those. But with that said, you have set up this scenario where, and I guess there's a certain inevitability. I mean, I imagine, I don't know if there's a set algorithm, but I imagine when you get to a certain number of people around the globe during a pandemic who get infected, the odds of a mutation start to go up. And there was a certain inevitability that we would get to this point. It's just a question of what would we have done to mitigate things to get there. And so thinking about mitigation with this new, and some of these mutations are more virulent in terms of their impact on people, and some are more infectious. And then just from a statistical standpoint could lead to more, obviously, deaths and sicknesses. Let's talk best practices, what we know now in terms of best practices. I mean, this is what also has been amazing to me, is that we're watching in real time science and knowledge develop in a huge race. And so what we know now relative to best practices is light years ahead of where it was 6 months ago, 9 months ago, whatnot. But tell us where we are. There's a couple of things that you have points that you want to make about best practices, because going forward, some people hopefully will get vaccinated sooner than later, but we need to be vigilant now.
Right. So personally, I've been double masking. So everywhere I go, so this is a cloth mask that I wear, and then underneath that I wear either a KN95, an N95, or a surgical mask, whatever I have handy for myself. I traveled yesterday. I actually tripled masked while I was traveling. So double masking, at least a minimum, a cloth mask and a KN95, or at least a good surgical mask is ideal. Because
why? What does double masking do?
Well, what it does is they did you hear about the principle, the Swiss cheese principle, of where you layer, obviously Swiss cheese has holes in it, but if you layer multiple layers of Swiss cheese, the holes don't all line up with one another. And if you think about that in terms of the virus, that it's likely just having two layers like that will decrease the likelihood of inhalation of virus. And so that's why we're doing 2 masks. And I know that Dr. Fauci is recommending 2 masks as well. And I think that all infectious disease doctors and epidemiologists at this point are recommending 2 masks because of these new variants, because they're so infectious. So the second thing that the CDC is recommending, of course, is social distancing. And we'll talk about social distancing in a moment. We used to talk about 6 feet. I'm going to make an argument that we need to actually do more social distancing. The CDC replaced hand washing now with their third recommendation. It used to be masking, social distancing, hand washing. They replaced hand washing with avoid crowds, because we know that this is almost 100% respiratory virus. And so there's been no cases of fomites, of touching something and then transmitting the virus to your face, to your mouth. So they've replaced, their third point has been replaced with avoid crowds. And the fourth point that they make now is getting vaccinated. So those are the big 4 recommendations. So for me, double masking, social distancing, avoiding crowds, and getting vaccinated. Now, in terms of social distancing, one of the studies that I sent you today was a study that took place. It was a case study right in South Korea, right outside of Seoul. And the index case, the person who had an infection came to a restaurant to meet somebody for lunch. And she was pre-symptomatic. It was before she actually had her symptoms, and she transmitted the virus to the person sitting across the table. But what was really fascinating was that because of the air circulation in the restaurant, she was able to transmit that virus to 2 other people that were downwind from her that were 15 feet and 20 feet. And the person who was at 20 feet, she was there. She was a teenager. She was there just to pick up a go order. She was there for less than 5 minutes, and she got COVID-19. The scientists went back and they genotyped each one of those viruses, and they were all the same virus. So it wasn't like she had coronavirus just from some other exposure. So this really challenges the notion of 6 feet and 15 minutes.
Let's put up this graphic so that we can just sort of get a sense of, as you discuss it, Brendan, if you can just pop that up. And this is pretty scary. And I think people can see essentially where the first person was. They're sitting at that table in sort of the upper right hand part of the graphic, and the airflow goes down, right? I mean, that's what it was about, like the flow of the air in the building, in the restaurant.
And the way they were able to determine that was they had closed circuit TV, and they were able to go back, and they had an air engineer come in here, because that's what there's somebody called an air engineer, and they looked at the swinging of the chandeliers, and by evaluating the swinging of the chandeliers, they were able to recreate the air circulation, and those are those black arrows that you can see, and you could see that the person who they have listed as a B was just happening to be seated, and when she was talking, you could see her virus caught wind and was able to be transmitted 15 feet and then also 20 feet away. And again, she was there for less than 5 minutes. So very much challenging the idea. And ever since that I've been reporting with the majority report here, Sam, I've always said that this has been aerosolized organism. And this is, again, another great example of how it is an aerosolized organism.
Yeah, you have. I mean, very early on, I don't know if it was in April, I think it was, that we had you on when I think your response was air, I think was at the time. And obviously no harm in washing your hands. And
I'm an infectious disease doctor. Of course. Right. Of course. I want everybody to wash their hands.
Right. The other thing I know that from you is that you have been looking forward to not having to shake people's hands for a long time. So, and we should also say, and this is just a side note, the incidence of the flu is down, like,
it's almost non-existent,
radically. I mean,
the WHO is giving us a interseasonal variant. In other words, it's at the level of when it's like summertime, which is almost negligible. And again, that's largely due to masking, and it's largely due to what we call respiratory etiquette.
And so, okay, so in terms of that study, do we have a sense of how fluky that is? In other words, like, is that a situation where it's just like their airflow was a certain way, and it was just sort of like funneled right into this person, and that can happen, but maybe it only happens 10, 15, 20% of the time? Or, I mean, the idea being that I guess what is the lesson that we learn is that the viral load can remain dense even at far distances if it's moving at a certain rate.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a really good question. So a couple of other studies that actually since December have also surfaced that have shown, there was one also that happened in Korea as well. And the reason why these are coming out of Korea is that they actually have excellent contact tracers, and they have an excellent public health system. So they're able to go in there and really put the effort into studying. Here in the US, unfortunately, they'll be like, well, have you been exposed to somebody? Have you done something? No. And they check off all the boxes and they go, we don't know why you got it. And that's like a majority of what happens, because they're in this box of 15 minutes, 6 feet apart. But there was another study that showed an apartment building in Korea, And what they showed was that there was a family that lived on the 6th floor, and within about 5 or 6 days, families directly above them and directly below them all got coronavirus. None of the families knew each other. They were able to document, again, on closed circuit TV that the families never interacted in elevators or anything like that. So when the case contact tracers came in, they noticed there was one duct in the bathroom that linked them all together up and down. And that what they suspected was that the index case got in, took a shower, was talking, laughing, whatever. With the humidity, aerosolized the virus. It got sucked into the ducts, and then it went into all sorts of different apartments, bathrooms. And so what we're learning is that this is a very transmissible virus. It is highly contagious, and we don't know about the infectious dose yet. And this is a question that you keep asking, and I promise the minute I know about it, I will get to you, because that is probably, next to the variants, next to the vaccines, the infectious dose is really one of the hottest topics that's being looked at right now. And theoretically, the infectious dose could change based upon the variant too. Is that right? I mean, absolutely. It's such a good point, Sam, because you may need less of an infectious dose with the variant. So either the wild type virus, the one that we are used to talking about, versus what these new viruses look like. And I would suspect that you probably need less of an infectious dose to get an infection. Okay. So while we're on best practices, you also sent a graph that was really helpful, particularly in the context of New York, but I imagine all around the country, people are, concerned about taking public transport, and I think there's been some graphics out there that have shown, where the best places to stand are in the subway, and obviously multiple masks. And I would imagine moving around as much as possible, in those contexts. You don't want to hang anywhere, really, where there's other people. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But you can't avoid that if you're taking a taxi or some other type of ride share or driving with other people, I guess. Although it's hard for me to imagine doing that with people who aren't in my pod, as it were, essentially. But you have a graphic where you show the safest way to do that. If you've got to get into a car with somebody, and particularly in a taxi or a ride share, or if you are a driver of a taxi or drive, this is the way to protect yourself and your passenger. Can we pop that up? Yeah, here it is. Absolutely. So what they did, they basically simulated a Toyota Prius going about 50 miles an hour. And what they found was that if the driver that's in the front left side, where a driver usually sits, the best place for a passenger is to sit exactly diagonal. So to be in the rear right side, right? Which is most people, if you're picking up a cab, either pulling up to the curb or the corner, you're usually going to sit there anyway, because that's closest. When you sit down, it's also you're the furthest away from the cab driver. And let's assume that we're talking about cabs here. So, and of course, the same is true for ride shares as well. But what these scientists did was they were able to measure the amount of airflow in the cabin of a car. And what they found was when the window opposite the driver, so the front right window, and the window opposite the passenger, so the rear left window, created the best amount of airflow that would occur in the cabin, and the air would finally be sucked out of the front right window, and it would basically create an air curtain. This is how the authors refer to it, as an air curtain between the passenger and the driver. So if you're going to be driving in a car or a cab, of course everyone's going to be masked. And this is only for 2 people. Of course, they're going to do other iterations of this, they said, but this was the first thing they published. But have the window opposite the driver and the window opposite the passenger be open, of course, weather permitting, because that creates the greatest amount of airflow. One of the things that they did say, which was really quite shocking, but not a surprise, is that unmasked when in a car with windows that are up, the driver and a passenger share 10% of the contents of the exhalation. So when which really, surprised me. And again, will leave me wearing masks for a very long time, considering that if windows are up, 10% of what leaves the mouth of a driver comes to me, and 10% of what leaves my mouth gets to a driver. So
wow.
It really does.
That's pretty efficient, sadly. All right. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. So, okay, how, we have to assume, and like you say, there's going to be other probably models that they use, but we have to assume that this is more or less the basic
yes.
dynamic within a car, even though that this car may be shaped a little different than another. How far down do the windows need to come?
They had the windows totally open, and I know that, of course, you being on the East Coast, I know it may be impractical to have all the windows, but I would, if it were me, I would probably at least try to have some, maybe halfway or 3/4 of a way, just to keep some circulation moving through the car.
Is having one window up here and one window back here, diagonal windows, is that better than actually having all four open?
According to them, yes. Because what
you're creating a force field on some level.
Yes, that's exactly right. They were able to create that air curtain between the driver, so there was no transmission between the driver and the passenger. So having those opposite windows open created that circulation of air, so that it ultimately exited out of that front right window.
Fascinating and counterintuitive. I know that, to the extent that I've taken any cars, which have not been many, to be honest. I immediately just go and I stick my head out the window. I sit across and I just open up the window and I just breathe basically from out there. I imagine if you can stick your face out the window, you're also doing pretty good too, but that it gets a little bit chilly.
Your mask may blow off or what have you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good to know. So let's move. So with those elements of best practices, is there anything else that we have learned in terms of best practices before we move on to sort of the variations and whatnot? I guess the idea that just being super conscious that this is a respiratory, it's delivered in terms of respiratory. So anything you can do to keep yourself from being able to suck in the air from other people is basically... Those are your watchwords.
Probably the last best practice I would mention is stay not only within your family pod or your pod, but in your house. Don't have other people over at this point with these new variants. We had a tiny little pod. My wife and I, we actually broke all ties with all of the people, even though we'd all be masked and, one of the things that we would do is maybe on the weekends, we'd rent a large Airbnb kind of right outside of New Orleans or some in the bayou. And we'd all be masked indoors, but outdoors we would, take off our masks and, and kind of all still be together or whatever. And indoors we would be masked, but we're not doing any of that anymore. That was fine for the wild type virus, the original strain. But with these new variants, at this point, it's not wise to be indoors with anybody that is not part of your immediate pod.
What about outside? I mean, we
don't know. We don't know yet. We don't know. I would be very cautious. I am very cautious. Back in the day, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I may not have worn a mask if I was outside with other people. Now, even when I'm outside, I wear a mask and I make sure that other people around me are wearing masks as well.
Because we just don't know. We know that the new variants are more efficient in sometimes in their transmittability and sometimes in their lethality. We just don't know how much more efficient it is.
No. Well, we do know. So I think let me parse what you just said. So, and I'm going to be splitting a very fine hair. We know that the B117 mutation, so this is slightly technical. So they all got to B117 together. But individually, but they all finally got that mutation where there's that rotation. The UK did it the first. That's why it has the designation of B117. But they all are more contagious by 50 to 70%. So we know that. The R naught is, I think, was 1.5 to 2. I think it's up to 3.5 if it were just straight up just an R naught without us doing anything differently. So there's no question that it is far more contagious. Okay. Now, you were talking about virulence. the variants, the variant that emerged out of South Africa has a mutation called E484K. So E484K, that variant is also shared with the P1 variant out of Brazil. Those that have that variant, that E484K, does a couple things. One, it deneutralizes antibodies. Okay, so it both with all the vaccines, right? It deneutralizes. So if you have natural immunization, in other words, you had COVID in the past and you have some antibodies, it deneutralizes those antibodies by up to 33%, or 33 times rather, 33 times. For vaccine immunity, it deneutralizes those antibodies up to 8 times. So we know, so that's why all the major manufacturers now are all talking about booster vaccines. They all last week they all came up with the same thing. You have Moderna, Pfizer, Novavax, and Johnson & Johnson all said that they're coming up with boosters, because we recognize that the South African, the one that came out of South Africa and the one that came out of Brazil, they deneutralized. But a couple more things. One, the second thing that they do is they disproportionately affect under 20-year-olds. So we may start to see the younger people being affected. And then the last thing that they do, which is particularly troublesome, is that they have higher viral loads. And when they have higher viral, people who have these mutations, those viral loads, and if you have a higher viral load, it does portend to having greater symptoms.
Okay. All right. So let me back up a little bit. So we have 2, it seems like, more or less cohorts of mutations at this point. Both those cohorts are significantly more efficient in being transmitted.
Yes.
The B117 has essentially doppelgangers, I guess.
Yes, that's what we're thinking about. Yes.
That have cropped up around because I would imagine there are similar circumstances, and the virus is the virus, and it's going to react to the context in which it's in more or less the same way.
That's exactly
if I put
right.
water, I can spill a glass of water, in my living room, and I can do one in my den. And if it's both downhill, they're both going to roll down, essentially. And
it's you're basically describing natural selection. This is exactly how natural selection works.
So, and the R naught, just to remind people, is a number which reflects, if you have one person, how many people do they give it to? And we had gotten it down to almost like one person gives it to one person and a half, or 1 1/4. And that's much better than giving it to 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, because that gets exponential. It's the old, Breck hair commercial. I told 2 friends and they told 2 friends. And
I always use that example.
Well, there it goes. We're both old. So, okay. So now, that's and that variant is problematic in the sense that if I have 100 people, even if it's not more deadly, if I catch it, if I have 100 people and 3 times as many people, 30 people are going to catch it as opposed to 10 people, we're going to get more deaths because of it. And we're going to get more prolonged illnesses because more people are going to get infected. So that's
just pure math. If the case fatality rate is 1.5 of 100, that's a number. 1.5 of 1,000 people, that's even a bigger number. 1.5 of 100,000 people is even a bigger number. So pure math dictates that not only are we going to see more cases, but we're going to also see more deaths as well.
And is there, because then I'll move on to the more deadly cohort. But is there also a concern that if you get the B117 after X number of times that is it called the wildfire? Is that what you called it? Wild type. If you get B117 after so many infections of wild type, because it evolves, is there another step up? Like, if enough people get B117, is it possible to get B234 or something?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, Dr. Fauci yesterday at least said we need to get everybody vaccinated, because the more people the virus infects, the more mutations it can have. So absolutely, there's no question this virus is mutating unprecedentedly. Like if you'd asked me in April when we first started chatting, would I have expected all of these variants and for them to become more contagious, I would say it's unlikely. But what we have seen in public health practitioners like myself have been warning folks, saying, listen, if you let this thing continue to circulate around the globe, that this will become problematic because this is what viruses do. And so it behooves all of us to do the best that we can do to make sure the whole globe, like they say, rising tide lifts all ships, right? We need to make sure that the whole globe is protected, because if we want to protect ourselves, we need to protect everyone around us as well, so those mutations don't occur.
Is it too early for us to know why it has been mutating in this way? Is it because simply there's, we don't have a lot of practice with viruses that millions of people get? And so therefore we now starting to understand that there's a algorithm here. If you get this many.
It could be, I talked about COVID 2022, right? COVID 22. Yeah. I was wrong. Apparently this is COVID 21. I expected at least COVID would do us a favor to give us a year off, let us rest, and then get us again. But when I was talking about COVID-22, this is what I was talking about, was that my biggest fear was that we were not going to just put this to bed and then we could just move on with our lives. And when I was talking about that, what I was projecting ahead was that, hey, listen, this could be with us for a while. We haven't really done the things that we need to do to be able to stop it, and that we could see continued either mutation or, there's 40,000 other viruses speculated that are living in fruit bats that can infect humans. All 40 of those are potential candidates as well.
So the Brazilian and South Africa, well, we're not going to refer to them as, but the ones that emanated out of there that are more virulent, we also know that they're more efficient in the way, and you say that they impact younger people more. What is it about? So all of these share this notion that one of the spikes just rotated 20. What is it that makes it more virulent in terms of its capacity to harm us? And why would it be? Does this thing right here, is that what impacts the ability for younger people to catch it more?
That shift is it only refers to infectivity.
Okay.
So, right. So we don't know. So calling it more virulent, it certainly appears to be more virulent. It does. We don't know. It's way too early to see why it affects a younger cohort. And it's far too early to understand why you have greater viral loads in people who have that E484K. It could be that you just need less of infectious dose. I mean, if I were to speculate, if I were to have my arm, kind of twisted, really think about it, what I would think through is that you just have more virus. They're more effective in getting into those ACE2 cells, which means that it gets into the cell, it creates more viruses. Those viruses go and circulate through the body. They're more effective in getting to cells. And so you just end up having a more effective virus that's able to do what it does more efficiently, and that could increase the viral load. And again, viral load does portend to symptom severity, which could portend to increased virulence and mortality. There's a path forward that does speculate that.
Okay, so now let's talk about the vaccinations, because I mean, at the end of the day, the answer, it's good to know those aspects of the thing, and obviously scientists are looking into it, and we're going to get more data. But at the end of the day, the answer becomes more or less the same thing, which is wear more masks, keep further away, don't get into a closed environment with people, and so vaccination. Let's start with some just basic questions, because I know there's a difference between the vaccinations. We've talked a little bit about the difference. Last time we spoke, the Pfizer and the Moderna are based on mRNA technology. The Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca are on different technologies. But broadly speaking, do we know the answer to some of these questions? And if there's a variance between the vaccinations, tell me. But can I get the vaccination? Depending on which one it is, the numbers on my ability to get sick go down dramatically. The ability for me to die, or the chances of me dying, go down dramatically. The chances of me catching it go down dramatically. What about, that part where you shook your head a little bit. I can get it. It can be around me. It just doesn't impact me. Can I give it after I've gotten the vaccination?
I would say that yes, you can. We don't know for 100%, but again, complete speculative, educated guess. What we have seen are some case studies of people who got both vaccines and then they test positive later. They're asymptomatic, they don't get sick, but they do test positive for PCR. It's probably one of these things where you can be colonized with the virus, not infected with the virus, right? So what does that mean? That means infected means that the virus gets into the cell. Colonized means it just lives outside of the cells. And you probably are going to have it for a couple days, whereas if you get infected, you'll have it for like 10 to 14 days. So the amount of virus that you have on board is significantly shortened. That's speculation, but I have a feeling that's what we're going to see. And that because you have the virus in your mouth and nose, you could very likely continue to transmit it. You're not going to transmit it to the length of time and probably to the degree if you were infected, but you could still get it, but it won't affect you. Now, remember, it's 95% efficient, right? The Moderna and the Pfizer, 95%. So that means there's 5% chance that you could still get it. 95% is about as good as an odds you're going to get. So I'm happy to take them. But it's likely that you could still transmit. This is why it's important to continue to wear masks. Very important to continue to wear masks.
And so conceptually, the idea is that the vaccine, you're still a host for the virus, but you're just a really bad host. You don't feed your guest. You don't let them move in. You don't let them get rest. They don't replicate in the same way. They're just there hanging out at your front doorstep saying like, are you going to invite us in? We're going to hang out here. We're protected from the rain, but you're not giving us any food. You're not, going to pour us a drink. That's basically what's going on there. And they hang out there. And after a couple of days, they say, you know what? Let's just go on to the next house, essentially.
Yeah.
Is that basically the concept?
It's a great analogy. Absolutely.
Okay. And so now let's talk about this. So 95% effective. My understanding is that the Moderna or that the Johnson, let's just compare them, because I think it got a little bit lost with the Johnson. Like my understanding is no one died who in their trial.
After like 40 days, there was like 100% a protection for mortality and also a severe infection as well. But remember, all of this was by press release. So we haven't gotten we haven't seen the studies yet. The studies we have seen have been through Moderna, Pfizer, and Novavax, all three. And nobody's talking about Novavax, and I don't understand why. It also was an Operation Warp Speed vaccine, and it also had 90% efficacy. It's also separated by 2 doses by 21 days. And it also has standard refrigeration. So I have a feeling that Novavax is going to be one, once it hits the market, is going to be sought after, because the Moderna and the Pfizer require, certainly the Pfizer does require those sub-freezing temperatures. But the Pfizer and Moderna have 95% efficacy. Novavax has a roughly a 90% efficacy. And then the Johnson & Johnson has anywhere between a 66 to 72% efficacy. But after about a month or so, it had even a greater protection. And as far as I know, I think yesterday or the day before, Johnson & Johnson actually applied for an EUA, emergency use authorization, with the FDA for a single jab, for a single dose vaccine. So that's where we're at. And listen, we were looking for anything greater than 50%. And an influenza vaccine is anywhere between 50 to 60%. So 72% still is great, And
people are talking about, and Johnson & Johnson's also looking into the idea of a booster shot too, right? Is that
right? Exactly, to account for the variants.
And so there are, and just to be clear, that there's 2 ways of looking at this vaccination. And one is, you as a person can go out, you should still protect other people because you don't want to catch it and give it to somebody else. But you as a person are, at least, you should not have as much anxiety about dying, essentially. You can go out with but when we start to talk about what it means for public health, the idea of having people walking around who have a theoretically shortened period of time in which they could infect other people, less of an opportunity to infect other people, even if they come in contact with it, still practicing these things. I mean, it's really just a matter of like everybody, if we could in 2 weeks get everybody one of those shots, it doesn't really matter which one they get at that point. If everybody had those in 2 weeks, we'd be, June would be like, we'd be going to concerts, right?
You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. And I wish we had that public health infrastructure. And we've talked about in the past how the U.S. public health infrastructure is very, very poor, probably not unlike our structural infrastructure, which I think is like a D-. Right. I would probably say the same for the public health infrastructure as well. If we did have a solid, you heard about, I've talked about in the past that the plan of action under the Trump administration has been inaction. And you saw that for 100% fact when the Biden-Harris administration got in. They were like, where's the vaccine plan? And they were like, we don't have a vaccine plan. Again, plan of action was always inaction. And so if there had been something that had been started in the summer, which is what they should have done because they knew that they were going to be coming out with them, then yes, what you were saying could have potentially happened. But they shifted all the responsibility onto the states. The states shifted all those responsibilities for me in Louisiana into the parishes or municipalities, and then into the health departments. And all of them are underfunded. Everybody's overworked after a year or so of doing this. Where now are you going to start getting all of the supplies and the needles and you have 10 doses in Moderna. Now you have to line up 10 people or 5 or 6 doses in Pfizer. And now you have to make sure, because if you crack a vial, you don't want to let them go to waste. That's liquid gold, quite frankly. Right. So, and then if somebody doesn't show up, so it's just a lot of work that goes into it. And all of that, again, this was all known. This was all seen. We were saying you have to do something, and there was just no plan, unfortunately.
So the hard part, it seems, is the hardest part about this is having to be so surgical, forgive the pun, with getting those shots in the arm because they're so precious, because it's liquid gold. So it seems to me the sort of like blunt instrument approach to this would be, let's turn it into just liquid water. Like, let's produce so much of this that if your parish in Louisiana drops a thing or is sloppy or doesn't have the proper needles so that they can get 6 doses out of it, or the refrigerator breaks down or something like this, it sucks, but it doesn't matter. Do you have any sense, and I know this is a little bit outside your portfolio, do you have any sense of like, is this something that we could just say, here's $400 billion. Let's get this stuff produced out the door tomorrow.
Absolutely. That and DPA, Defense Protection Act. And I know that the COVID czar, and his name just, I think it's Jeff Zitzer. He is talking about enacting and utilizing the Defense Protection Act, something that should have been done long ago.
Defense Production Act.
Production Act. I'm sorry, Production Act. That's right. And so that, yes, there would be some, notion of compelling manufacturers to create the vials, the vaccine, or the all the accoutrements that go along with it. But then, yes, that would also help Pfizer, Moderna, or what have you. But the other thing too is that all of the patents that go along with these, and these were all publicly funded. The whole mRNA vaccine came out of the NIH. And in one of the slides I sent you, you'd be remiss by not highlighting Dr. Kiesmikia Corbet, who's with the NIH, and she's somebody who I refer to as a new American hero because she was 29 years old when she came to the NIH and started developing these mRNA vaccines against coronaviruses. Yeah, that's Dr. Corbet. She was 29 years old when she came to the NIH. She's a prodigy immunologist, and her quote there is, "To be living in this moment where I have the opportunity to work on something that has eminent global importance, it's just a surreal moment for me." She's so incredibly humble. But to say that these were all these were all vaccines that were created publicly through taxpayer dollars. And so to a certain degree, we're kind of hamstrung with the patents that go along with them. And that's certainly out of my portfolio. But
not if we institute the Defense Production Act. I mean, if we really think this is a war, then we treat it like a war, and we would have no problem with getting into arguments about patents if we felt like we were being invaded on some level. I can also say, in terms of that doctor, I think when I was 29, I think my big achievement was getting to the final level of the GoldenEye Nintendo 64 game. So, but
he's amazing.
I can reevaluate some things. But all right, well, listen, this has been an incredible update for us, and I would like to reconvene in maybe about 6 or 8 weeks if we could, and get a sense of what's going on there. Folks can check out your daily podcast called The COVID Noise Filter that they can find on any of their podcast services. They can also check out your daily stream on Facebook, 5 p.m. Eastern time. It's an hour-long show that covers, some of the more, I guess, like weedy epidemiological data, and a story of the day and some answers that you provide. Dr. MarkAlain Dery, I cannot thank you enough. I always feel at least a little more confident with what's going on. I want to say happier, but we haven't quite gotten there yet, but I certainly feel more confident after speaking to you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so that's where we are in terms of COVID at this point. And like I said at the beginning of the show today, we have now reached a point, and I think many folks saw the end of the game last night. A lot of people thought mistakenly that the cardboard cutouts of fans in the stadium were actual fans. So it looked like it was really packed.
Yeah.
The worst part was after the Super Bowl, you had people running around. I imagine we're going to have, and of course, a lot of people maybe travel there and are going to travel back out. So,
and I think 1/3 of the audience were vaccinated healthcare workers. So the Super Bowl was less the problem, especially with all that air circulation outside. It was like you see thousands of people at parties. Yeah. So we will hopefully not see a bump from that, but we very well may. However, the good news is, with everything that we just heard from the doctor, is that the number of vaccinations being distributed or injected, I guess, on a daily basis is now greater than the number of infections. So I don't know that there's necessarily a medical relevance to that, but it sounds like we're heading in the right direction. We just need...
Feels nice.
It feels nice. And we just need a lot more vaccinations. All right, that's it for us today. If you missed any part of the show, check it out on Peacock on the Choice channel. You can find it at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. We will be back tomorrow at the start of the impeachment trial. We'll see you then. And for those of you sticking around...
Hey!
You're here.
What's
and
up?
I know everybody's waiting to head into the fun half. And this has been probably the worst day that Emma has had since coming to the Majority Report. Like that first sense, and it'll take a little time where like every day is like, oh, do I got to go into work? But today, I think you probably had that feeling of like,
I always enjoy coming to work. But
today
yes,
was a little
today it's like, I still feel that my opinion is correct, But I'm questioning myself a little bit. I am.
Well, I mean, it's not you who's questioning it. It was Tom Brady. Tom Brady basically said to you what he said to everybody in his career when he was picked, like what number? Like, I don't know.
199.
In the draft, and he was
6th round.
Benched at University of Michigan, and he was like the number 6 quarterback on that team or something like that. I don't know what it was. And everybody just said, you can't do it, Tom. You can't do it. And then he just comes out and he does it.
Look, I mean, he's not even human. It's really unreal all he's accomplished. I've said it, he's a legend. I just think the
how do you go to over 50% of the Super Bowls?
Well, you are the quarterback of Bill Belichick. I mean, and he's now.
I mean, except for
last night, right? Yeah. With Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, top 10 offensive line in the league.
This is just. Cameron it goes to show you can be a total expert at the NFL.
And
but when it comes to Tom Brady, you just can't.
Devin White,
go Pats.
And all the refs.
Go Pats. Go Pats. That's all I can say. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. Before we do, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. I just also want to say that Brady never supported Trump politically. He was friends with the guy. I mean, he's a robot. He's a robot.
Locker.
He's a robot.
I mean, that's also like, I almost give him a pass on that. I know they say he's a MAGA guy, but he's just kind of like a vapid person.
Yeah.
So he just like... Trump wanted to be in his orbit, so he's like, "Oh, wear the MAGA hat." I don't even think he cares remotely about politics.
Right. I don't think he has that. They didn't program him for that. They didn't at the
like
factory.
Peyton Manning genuinely likes Republican politicians,
yeah.
And so does Brett Favre. Like those guys actually, yeah, not. The goats aren't. The goats of old are not the best.
I might detect a little bit of anti-Southern bias in that classification there. The real MAGA guys are.
Elite.
Yeah, the real MAGA guys are these Southerners.
Yeah, I guess that's
well.
Me.
I mean, the shoe fits. Anyways, folks, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. Also, don't forget AM Quickie. It's available to you every morning. Get your 7 minutes of news very quickly in the morning, in the AM, if you will. AM Quickie. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Get 10% off. Don't forget, Tuesday through Friday, the Nomiki Show. Nomiki Show.
I think that's right.
The Nomiki Show.
I'm not.
Find it at youtube.com/Nomiki Show.
Wait.
Why couldn't you call it the Nomi Show?
Well, that would make your 2-syllable threshold,
right,
a lot easier. But I'm not one to talk. I've been getting it wrong, I guess, for 4 years at this point.
That's exactly what happened to me, too. Like, she just let me say it the wrong way for so long.
I know.
And then, boom, I was done. You can check that out tomorrow. Of course, The Antifada, twitch.tv/The Antifada. Matt.
Thursday on Left Reckoning, we're having Grace Blakely, author of The Corona Crash and Stolen, to talk about COVID economy, financialization, why the rich fear capital control. So big guest for us Thursday night, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
We got a lot to talk about in the fun half. CBO just came out with a score for the minimum wage. We will remind you that the head of the CBO is a former American Enterprise Institute head, I think. But the good news about that score is that even though, and people take a lot of issue with the way that the CBO scored this, even though that they scored it as actually increasing the deficit, it does, in fact, affect the U.S. budget, and therefore
can be passed through reconciliation. And also, what Democrats can just go, it'll pay for itself.
Well, I mean,
that's what Republicans said about the tax cuts, despite the disastrous CBO score.
Right, of course. You don't necessarily need to. Everybody agrees one way or another it's going to affect the budget of the United States. And that's all you really need at that point. But we will talk more about that in the fun half, and you can join us. Of course, the number is 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. That's what that sound means, that I have turned it on. And this silent sound is me turning on the IM. And so now we're taking IMs. You can IM the show at majorityapp.com. The app is free. Majority app. You pick up the app and then you can IM us. But the app is free. And of course, we track all your information and we send it to MSDNC, and they observe you and tell me what to say to you.
Yeah, after we get our talking points in the morning.
We send you the talking points directly through the app. So that's just one of our features that we have. And
transparency. That you guys need to know what we're being told to say.
Exactly. All right, we'll see you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck them. Almost says what?
What?
Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black Africans. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on! Fuck them. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Wow.
Little remix at the end.
We got a little problem with the connection today. Right, guys?
Not for the interview, but just for that.
All right. Good. Beautiful. Well timed. Let's see what we got here. Oh, I got to turn the voicemail off. Did I not even get in? There we go.
Boom, boom. Oh,
there we are.
I did half of it.
Yeah, I like that sound.
It is very pleasing.
Folks, a couple of different issues that are extant. It does seem at this point, although one can never be sure, that the decision has been all but made in the White House that this is going to happen through reconciliation, and everybody seems to be fine with that. All the polling shows that the American public doesn't give a crap whether it is 51 to 50 or 60 to 40. They don't care. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We want help to fight the pandemic, help to keep people safe, help for people to pay their bills, stay in their homes. On and on. And they do not care about what the procedural methodology is for voting for it. Nobody cares about reconciliation. They just don't.
They don't care if their check comes in a purple envelope or a blue one. I mean, that's essentially what this comes down to.
I think people would probably even care more about the color of the envelope than that. In fact, just so that, like, if when we talked about the Republicans passing the tax cuts, if we talked about the notion of reconciliation, that they passed it through reconciliation, beyond like just explaining things like we do here, I would be shocked. If the words ever came out of my mouth like, this is unfair, the American public is not going to like the fact that it's passed in reconciliation. I don't even think we said that for those tax cuts that went just to millionaires and billionaires.
Well, you're engaging on the substance of it as opposed to the procedure, which seems to be oftentimes the religious focus of Democrats. But even like we're seeing as they water down the income threshold, you have Janet Yellen going on cable news saying, what about 60,000? I don't know. Joe Manchin pushing for 50,000 as he is the senator from the poorest state in the country. Like, that is a function of obsession over procedure and, you would say, branding. Well, we can't just,
It's absurd. It's totally absurd. And
we have to debate and change. And then
here is Joe Biden talking with Norah O'Donnell on CBS News about the idea of the $1,400 checks, which we already know should be $2,000. And now they're quibbling over who gets them. And I mentioned the other day that David Dayen wrote in his piece that there's been a study and the difference is really just $65 billion. Why? Because a certain amount of this is going to get clawed back by people whose taxes go up in 2020 because they're made more money or whatnot. It's just, we're talking about like relative to the bailout package and just the American budget. I mean, just almost no money here. It's just a question of whether you want. Well, here, play this clip.
You've said you're not compromising on the $1,400 checks. You made that promise. You're sticking to it. So the big question is who gets the check? Exactly right. Is it someone who makes up to $50,000 or is it someone who makes up to $75,000?
I'm prepared to negotiate that, but here's the deal. Middle-class folks need help. But you don't need to get any help to someone making $300,000 or $250,000. So it's somewhere between an individual making up to $75,000 and phasing out, and a couple making up to $150,000 and phasing out. But again, I'm wide open on what that is.
All right. I mean, and I think the numbers he's talking about, 75 to 150, are reasonable. I mean, obviously he's right. You don't want to give money to people at $250,000. They don't need it. But here's the problem. And this is why, like, you're going to err on one way or the other, right? I mean, this is always the dilemma in any type of public policy that isn't, broadly universal. Now, you could give it to people who are making $250,000 and you just have to increase taxes, which would be the easy way to do it. But they don't want to spend that money. Fine. You're going to err one way or another. You're either going to not give the money to people who desperately need it, small number of people, we don't know, and by small number we mean like maybe tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 of people who did well in 2019, didn't do as well in 2020 because pandemic, and they're going to be really, really hurting. Or you're going to give money to people who are doing perfectly fine. They're just going to put it in their savings bank. The extra, the $1,400 or whatever. There's going to be some number of those people. Even if there was like 6 people who didn't need it and 4 people who desperately did need it, and you're giving it to the 6 so that you can make sure you give it to those 4, why not? Claw it back later from those people who didn't need it with taxes. They're going to put it into the economy eventually. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just supposedly some people's sense of justice. But the fact is that I would give it to 6 people who didn't need it to help to make sure that 4 people who desperately do need it get it. That's the whole point of this. It's the pandemic relief.
Well, yeah, targeting and means testing this. I mean, it's already means tested. Only bogs it down, and it only makes senators, as you say, get to contribute to their personal brand as being fiscally responsible. I mean, the idea that Manchin is seemingly central to this, when Virginia is 50th out of 50 in poverty, and he's the one that's being one of the top Democrats that's trying to push this threshold down. It's just insanity to me. And obviously then you have limousine liberals like Mark Warner, who are doing that. I haven't used that term in a while. But it's nonsense. And from a purely political perspective, it's also incredibly risky for zero reward. Zero. And that's why you have John Ossoff, who is progressive, who is making this case and hammering this like, no, I made this promise. Yeah. I got to Washington based on these $2,000 checks. They're not even $2,000 at this point. It's the difference. And now Biden's marketing it as such. Like, he's going to Biden and saying, we cannot change this threshold. And I think Bernie Sanders and also Ron Wyden are also leading that charge.
Here's
as well.
Sanders on State of the Union, CNN State of the Union, making the case that like what are we doing here? Really good.
And what we need to do is have a strong cliff so it doesn't kind of spill over to people making $300,000. And that's what I support. And that's what I think most people understand. But to say to a worker in Vermont or California or any place else that if you're making, $52,000 a year, you are too rich to get this help, the full benefit, I think that that's absurd. And it's also, from a political point of view, a little bit absurd that you would have under Trump these folks getting the benefit, but under Biden, who is fighting hard for the working class of this country, they would not get that full benefit. So I think from a policy point of view, we've got to do the right thing, and that's $75,000 and $150,000 for a couple. From a political point of view, it is absurd to be telling working class people, somebody has a decent union job, they're making $55,000, $60,000, sorry, you're not eligible for the program. Makes no sense to me at all, nor do I think it makes sense to the American people.
It is Biden punching himself in the face by entertaining this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bernie makes a great point. You really want Donald Trump to have been better about this?
Apparently, there's a 40 million person gap in between that 75 and 50 threshold. So those 40 million people would have ostensibly received a check under Trump and then not under Biden.
Yep.
That's the political cost. And what will those people do? What will their voting decisions be based on that? For what reason?
Well, there is, and know that right now, as it's become clear that Biden has decided, and we're doing this through reconciliation, that it's really just going to come down to a couple of Democrats who are going to attempt to be obstacles. There's going to be every right-wing think tank, every corporate think tank in the country is now going to be producing studies that show you should make the check available only to people making $40,000 a year or $50,000 a year. That the minimum wage, maybe we shouldn't do $15 an hour. I mean, this is what's going to happen. Now, the CBO Congressional Budget Office, which is responsible for scoring bills. In other words, make an assessment as to what the expense of a certain bill is going to be. Now, the problem with this is that when you're talking about a bill, there's a bill like we're going to spend $50 million or $50 billion or whatever it is on buying everybody a pony. Okay, that's pretty easy to measure what the cost of that bill is going to be. It's going to cost $50 billion because you're going to spend that money on getting everybody a pony. Maybe you can do it. Maybe you can't. Maybe the CBO comes back and says you'll be able to get, half the country a pony, whatever it is. But then there are things like the minimum wage. How is that going to impact the federal budget? Some studies show that it could raise $65 billion a year because you've got more people are getting paid $15 an hour. That means more money is going into taxes, that they're paying taxes on that. We also know that the velocity of money for people who are making that amount of money is faster. In other words, it travels through the economy more. If I'm making $15 an hour, as opposed to someone who's making $500 an hour, that $15, I'm putting that out the door right away. I got a ton of bills. I want to buy some food. I'm going to spend that money immediately. Every extra dollar you give somebody making $500 an hour, they're not going to spend it. They're going to take it. They're going to invest it, whatever. The velocity of money for people at that end of the income spectrum is much faster. And so it creates more activity, and then it creates more taxes. But also, at the same time, maybe the minimum wage, you could do a study and you could see like, we're going to lose a certain amount of jobs over the course of 10 years. That's going to diminish tax revenues. Or it's going to save money on food stamps or whatnot. And then you also have to figure out, as you look down the road, what's going to happen with the economy over the next 10 years. And you know how predictable that is? Not very. Right? Nobody predicted a pandemic. Nobody predicted whatever it is. And so here is that's the tricky part about scoring something like the minimum wage. The CBO has done it. It starts with certain assumptions that are often influenced by who is running it. These people were appointed by Donald Trump and the Republican Senate. Former head of the American Enterprise Institute, right-wing think tank, developed these numbers. And so the CBO has come out and said that raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour over the course of 10 years will increase the deficit by $65 billion. So $6 billion a year. $6 billion a year. Not very much money, but it's a figure, and it impacts the budget. And that is really what is involved in whether it's going to be a part of reconciliation. Here is Bernie Sanders being asked on Sunday about Joe Biden saying the $15 minimum wage might not make it into the COVID relief bill, ostensibly because Joe Biden happens to think the parliamentarian will keep it out. Now, the fact is that the vice president of the United States can overrule a parliamentarian's interpretation of a law, or of a rule, I should say, and let it in. But even in that instance, here's Bernie Sanders' case that it should be in that COVID relief bill.
You're the Senate Budget Committee chairman. Is President Biden wrong?
Well, I hope he is, Jake. As you indicated, the president supports the $15 an hour minimum wage. I do. Our last poll I saw has 62% of the American people supporting it. Because at the end of the day, we are in the midst of massive income and wealth inequality. People on top are doing phenomenally well. And yet we have literally tens of millions of Americans working for starvation wages. You cannot make it in any state in this country on $9 or $10 an hour. We've got to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I can tell you, as chairman of the Budget Committee, we have a room full of lawyers working as hard as we can to make the case to the parliamentarian that, in fact, raising the minimum wage will have significant budget implications and, in fact, should be consistent with reconciliation rules.
During the campaign, you were running for president, and you said whoever you picked as VP would overrule the parliamentarian in order to pass legislation such as Medicare for All with just 51 votes. Should Vice President Harris do that, overrule the parliamentarian to keep the minimum wage increase in this bill?
Well, before we get to what the vice president is going to do, I got to get through the parliamentarian, and then I got to get 50 votes in support of raising that minimum wage to $15 an hour. But I am working as hard as I can to make that happen. In America, people should not be working 40 or 50 hours a week and living in poverty. We've got to raise that minimum wage, which, Jake, has not been raised, unbelievably, since 2007.
Even if it makes it into the bill, you're going to need every Democrat on board. And West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says he does not support increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. He has suggested he could get behind a lower amount, such as $11 an hour, which I think is what the rate is in West Virginia. Would you be willing to compromise in order to get Manchin's vote?
Now, I strongly look, a $15 an hour minimum wage is not a radical idea. Making $600 a week in the United States of America, barely, given the high cost of rent and all the other living expenses that people have to pay, that's not a lot of money. So these are debates that we're going to have within the Democratic caucus. But I hope and believe that at the end of the day, the members of the Democratic caucus understand that we do need to pass a $15 an hour minimum wage.
I just can't get over the idea that, first of all, I don't know how much Joe Manchin's worth. It's probably millions. I mean, probably more than that.
Sure.
I don't know, more than millions, but millions with an S. And the idea that he's like, it's too much, man. It's too much.
Also, I just looked it up, and I don't think that's right. West Virginia minimum wage, apparently it's $8.75. But that's still higher than the federal minimum wage.
It's higher than the federal minimum wage. I mean, look, I don't know. Maybe they figure out some type of waiver so that we can continue to screw one of the poorest states in the country,
right?
And keep them immiserated so that the rest of the people can get 15, they'll get 11. But people will really love Joe Manchin for that. Thank you, Senator.
Yes,
you were able to secure for us an $11 minimum wage, and we're not subject to that $15 minimum wage. God, I am so glad I don't have that extra $4 an hour that I'm making. Thank you, Joe Manchin.
Well, then
that is called the Joe Manchin discount.
Yeah, he got to brand himself as fiscally responsible, though. So I'm sure that they can eat that, right?
Exactly.
Eat that. Put that on their dinner plates.
Exactly. I went down to the supermarket. Went down to, I don't know what the name of the supermarket is in West Virginia.
But
Price Right.
Yeah, and also just so
my Manchin discount.
Your Manchin credit card.
Yeah.
The CBO score, I'm sure there is going to be in the coming days a complete dismantling of the math that got them to find that we would lose 1.4 million jobs. They're saying, because a lot of progressive economists are completely their reporting on that has or their studies on that have not found that at all. But the issue that is presented by the score is that it allows people like Joe Manchin to throw their hands up and not
Absolutely.
even touch this.
Absolutely.
So it's bad news. Even though exactly what you're saying is correct, the fact that yes, it can be now based on what the CBO found dealt with in reconciliation. That's the one piece of good news, but overwhelming is the bad news that it gives these centrist Democratic lawmakers an out from addressing this.
And just remember, we're talking about, depending on which bill is the basis of it, because it's not written quite yet. Bernie Sanders' proposal for the $15 minimum wage, I think, took 4 or 5 years. 5 years, I think, to roll in. And I think Biden's is actually even 4 years to roll in, is actually quicker than Sanders. But it wouldn't be $15 an hour tomorrow. It would be $15 an hour, depending on whose version, 4 or 5 years out. Maybe that's what we'll end up seeing, is that it's going to be like 6 years out or something. Or maybe they index it like it becomes $15 an hour 6 years out, if your minimum wage is your median wage is this today, who knows? We'll see. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210 area code. Who is this? Where are you calling from? Two-1-0.
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. This is John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How are you, John? What's on your mind?
I'm good. I've been enjoying your coverage of the COVID relief bill and the possibility of eliminating the filibuster. You've had on some excellent guests, including Adam Jendelson, Eric Levitz, and Alex Perrine. I appreciate the fact that you've mentioned if a bill is passed through reconciliation, it could trigger cuts to Medicare due to the 2010 sequestration law. The fact that no real effort to eliminate the or even reform the filibuster by the Senate leaders or Biden means that H.R. 1, which originated in the House and is a voting reform bill that's being introduced in the Senate as S1, has no chance of passing. The same applies to statehood for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Activists are the only ones pushing for the reform of the filibuster. So it looks like a possible watered-down version of the relief bill will pass with tens of millions getting less money from the government than they received when they received the $600 in December under Trump. Biden has been wishy-washy about helping people in a timely manner. While his rhetoric says they want to help, their actions show a lack of commitment, and the White House is afraid to push the conservative Dems, while he personally believes in some of their rhetoric. I wonder how many people will be angry who received money in December but didn't receive any money under Biden, and if the Democrats can deliver on the $15 an hour minimum wage, and will it affect the midterm voters? Here's a tweet from Ari Berman on Thursday. GOP voter suppression plans. Roll back every aspect of mail voting. End automatic and electric day registration. Pass onerous new voter ID laws. Allow GOP legislatures to overturn the will of voters. Gerrymander electoral college results. In my last call to the show, I mentioned the 5 states that had the closest margins, with the exception of Nevada, had their electoral votes change by voting by congressional district instead of winner-take-all, with the exception of Nebraska being where they're going to change back to a winner-take-all system, which means Biden, who won District 2, he would lose that particular vote, or any Democrat running. If those changes are put in place, I thought Biden would have a 272 electoral college win, but some states were late in putting up their numbers by congressional districts, and Trump actually won 3 more districts in swing states: Michigan's 8th district, Pennsylvania's 8th district, and Wisconsin's 3rd district. So that means the electoral college would have been tied at 269 apiece, and the House would break a tie by having each state getting 1 vote, and unfortunately Trump would win that vote by a 27-21 margin, with Pennsylvania and Michigan being tied. An unfortunate effect of the 2020 election was that the return of the centrist voter. And if a progressive wants to run in a rural district, I understand that. But in most states, you don't have to live in a district you run in. So I would recommend that progressive candidates run in urban areas as opposed to running in swing districts. A good example of this is in Austin, Texas, where progressive Mike Siegel, who ran 2 great campaigns in 2018 and 20, but lived in a crack district where he came up short. If he decides to run again, I would suggest that he runs against Lloyd Doggett, whose 35th district runs from Austin to San Antonio. I don't know if you have any questions or comments.
A what district did you say? A crack district?
A crack district, like a pack and crack. That's that's what they do for gerrymandering. So
Okay.
this is real common, like in San Antonio.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they designate one Democratic district, which is like Joaquin Castro's district, and then the rest of them, they split the city up into different areas, to where they have rural districts surrounding it, but the rural areas overwhelm the city areas, and so you end up getting representation from the rural areas and the suburbs that vote for Republicans, and that happens in Austin also.
Now, I mean, I think Doggett is pretty good. He's certainly pretty good coming out of Texas. He would have been the guy who would have taken over Ways and Means if Richie Neal had been knocked off. I mean, frankly, I would gather every single bit of resources I could to primary Richie Neal. That would be good. But all right. So with that said, I just want to reiterate one point you made, and this was from the Daily Poster. People should check that out. That's Sirota's thing, and what's the other guy? I can't remember.
This piece was written by Andrew Perez.
Oh, right, Andrew Perez. Okay, and he wrote a piece citing Claudia Sahm, who is an economist. Nearly 40 million Americans received the $600 COVID payment. This is the point you were making, John.
Yeah.
In December. They would be denied checks or only see partial payments. In other words, you'd have 40 million people aggrieved who are like, I got screwed. As soon as Biden comes in, I get screwed. I get the full 600. And as soon as Biden comes in, I don't get the rest that everybody else gets. It's just, politically speaking, it's just the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But John, appreciate the breakdown, rather depressing breakdown of what would happen if those so-called voting reforms happen with the Electoral College. But let's hope that A, they don't happen. B, Joe Biden plays this in a smarter fashion than catering to Mark Warner. Mark Warner's going to vote for the bill. And frankly, so won't Joe Manchin at the end of the day. Get them to vote for it. Let's be serious. Let's stop messing around here. John, I appreciate
one thing they could do would actually be to have the progressives say no, like even in the House, say no. If you're not going to give 70, if you're going to make the cutoff at 50,000, forget it. We're not going to vote for the bill,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I tweeted that because I think obviously it could be very powerful if the Georgia lawmakers join with someone like Sanders and Ron Wyden, who's holding firm here. He chairs the Senate Finance Committee.
Yep.
Yeah. So the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and the two new senators who flipped the Senate for the Democrats saying, hell no. Yeah, that could be really powerful.
Appreciate the call, John.
All right. Thank you.
Always a good call. Calling from a 541 area code. 541. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 541. You gotta now just wait because things slow. What's going on, Kyle? 541, are you there? See you there. Not.
Dang it. Is Mercury in retrograde? Stupid.
Here's the problem, right? Where if you don't want there to be tens of millions of Americans going like, hey, under Donald Trump, I got the full $600. Under Joe Biden, they put out $1,400 checks. I didn't get them.
And it's the same threshold for the $1,200 payment.
Yeah,
right? So they got more money.
Why am I getting screwed under Joe Biden? Well, there's a corollary to that. This happened on Newsmax the other day. The Heather Childers, she is the host. The guest is it Rachel Hamm?
That's right.
She
you know Rachel Hamm, Sam.
Who is she?
You don't know Rachel Hamm.
No, well, who is she though? Do we know who she is?
They do a nice little intro of her before she makes her point.
Let's hear. This is interesting. I've made the point many times before that a lot of those QAnon folks, and really Donald Trump's support, the majority of Donald Trump's support in this country, come from self-identified Christians that aren't necessarily like the Christians that you may know. But that's how they identify themselves. And just to give you a sense of where Donald Trump fits in to that milieu, here is Rachel Hamm.
Welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Heather Childers. There's this new column that we want to talk about right now. It's in Vox, and it's calling Donald Trump's presidency, the former president, a catastrophe for American Christianity. This despite the fact that President Trump, the former president, gained plenty of support with the Christian community during his presidency, especially with evangelicals. Joining us now is the author of the book, Life Changing, Rachel Hamm. She's also the host of the Rachel Hamm Show. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. We appreciate it. I'll just start with the obvious question. Was the Trump presidency, in fact, a catastrophe for Christianity?
Well, I have to laugh. President Trump was the best thing to happen to the Christian church in America since maybe Jesus. So, yeah, that's ridiculous. I read the article. I thought if it weren't, I don't know. I didn't know if he actually believed the things he was saying, but he is not in touch with what the evangelical church thinks at all.
Yeah.
Do you hear that?
I don't really...
Best thing the American Christian church since Christ himself. Now, or Jesus himself. Now, just we need to account for the possibility that she's referring to a different Jesus.
Okay.
Like, she didn't say it weird. She said Jesus, which is like, yeah, I think just remember Trump. Trump is the important one, actually.
Then, geez, us, right? Maybe that's what it was.
She could have meant that, or she could have meant like, this guy, Jesus, was his name. Jesus, Stevenson or Jesus.
But what have you done for me lately is what I'm saying.
Exactly. He's old. I'm new. I mean, can you just imagine, like, what? I just...
How demented you have to be.
I mean, because Jesus Christ, the one that we reference, who was born like, I guess, 2020 some odd years ago.
Who?
He was hugely important to Christianity. I'm not Christian, but I did.
Debatable, but
I was a religious studies major, and I did not study Christianity. But one of the things that we did learn in that class, the classes I took, Jesus Christ, very important to Christianity, like super important. So after him, huge drop off.
Yeah.
Then you just go wait to Trump.
Well, right. But I mean, Trump's the number 2. That's what she's saying.
Right.
There is this weird quality about him that's almost extra human. And I know this, like, bear with me here. Just his weird face, the orangeness, the real commitment to the comb over, the just adherence to the same look over and over, and then his complete lack of connection to any semblance of humanity. There are demented people out there that could perceive that as godlike. I see it more as kind of demonic, but I don't know.
It's possible. All right, so Trump is number 2. I want everybody to weigh in. Who's number 3?
It's been a drought, it's kind of Jesus, and then not a whole lot going on for the Christians until I came around.
Yeah. It happened to me.
And a lot of people don't know Jesus, born a Jew, actually. A lot of people don't know that.
A lot of people don't know. A lot of people saying that now.
Probably Netanyahu's number 3, right? For being real, for advancing the agenda.
Jesus, Trump, Netanyahu.
Pat Robertson.
Bob Kraft. Bob Kraft, too.
Brett Favre.
Bob Kraft, I would say. Great at golf.
Nick Saban.
Great at golf.
Yeah, I mean, the weird cultural obsession with Trump, it just persists. Also, I think that there's a worship of him in a way that we don't like to even admit to ourselves, that some of these intense evangelicals have. Remember Marjorie Taylor Greene rubbing his crotch?
A lot of people saying.
Yes.
A lot of people saying I'm just like number 2 to Jesus. Some people saying number 1. Some people are saying number...
I wouldn't say that, but some people are saying
that. I would say maybe tied, but probably number 2. Probably number 2. 541, are you there? You're gone. You're gone. You are gone. Calling from a 914 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going, Sam? This is Keith from Westchester, New York.
Keith, from Westchester, New York.
Good
First
area.
time and a long time, man.
All right. About time.
So, first off, our dads know each other, defense attorneys. Anyway.
Really?
So, yeah. I'm not going to dox myself, but they know each other.
Okay.
So,
who?
Sort of like our fathers, but both practice medical malpractice defense.
Oh, you and Sam's?
I don't know that my father practiced medical malpractice defense, but
they met through the practice.
Oh,
Sorry.
I see. Okay.
Ah.
Anyway, so I wanted to call and talk about right like before the election really started, like isolating Biden and kind of Bernie was in the running. There was like this really amazing like community of leftists that were like all on the same page. I miss that.
Yeah. I think part of this is, first off, let me just make one thing clear too. Like, when we talk about community of lefties, we should not oversample YouTube hosts and talk show hosts. We should not substitute lefties for those people. And I include myself in this. This is about branding and about getting audience and about, there are a lot more lefties out there actually doing stuff on the ground. And one of the things that I think, is problematic about how much, how much of an ability there is to sort of monetize these shows and whatnot is that there's a tendency for some of us to place ourselves in the center of things where we don't belong there. Like our role, at least my perception of my role, is to both educate and inform people and certainly push people in certain directions without a doubt. But to be supportive of stuff that people are doing on the ground. And, what we're doing here is we're not, when we talk about lefties getting along or not getting along, we should not allow our perception of, people who have voices and project those voices.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I kind of buried the lead. I mean, I'm a master's student. I'm from human rights program. A lot of the people in my circles are very like yes, we're very chronically online, but it comes from a real academic background. People are active in our DSA chapters. I'm in upstate, but most of my friends are in the city. The thing is more of like that sort of armchair philosopher, wannabe theorist who's in his late 20s. And when Bernie was in the front running, we were all really in this alliance. And there, as the stuff started bubbling over, we were all at each other's throats. And I really think there's potential for that sort of, everyone on the same page again as we critique Biden going forward. And I was hoping you guys would agree. And listeners too.
No, I think
too.
that's
I hope you all agree too.
I think that's coming. I mean, I'm the honeymoon phase is certainly over for me. And I think that we're going to see that eventually. And a lot of the hosts or, people online who do have a lot of influence, who only critique Democrats, like, it's going to ring a lot more hollow once now people who've spent a lot of time critiquing the powerful under Trump are now turning their focus to Biden, because that means I think people like myself and Sam, we have multiple notes as opposed to just one.
And I think, frankly, look, if you've listened to this show for any period of time, it's not going to be a surprise to you that we're going to critique Biden in some cases. But I also think that, we have a responsibility to sort of like, put it within some type of perspective. I mean, I think at this point, relative to my expectations of Biden, I think he's doing a little bit better. Now, it's still very, very early, right? And I think like what happens with with this COVID relief bill is going to be very, very telling. But when you look at some of the appointments and whatnot, and I'm still waiting on what's going to happen with the OCC appointment. And but like you look at guys like Gensler, and you look, there's been some very good appointments.
But even macro level stuff, like if Bernie doesn't get this 15 over the next 2 years or something, like that doesn't happen, there's going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. But here's the thing. And I think that like when you look at some of like what's gone on online, frankly, I think Emma's point is well taken because you've listened to this show for an extended period of time. It's not going to surprise you in any way that I'm going to be critiquing Biden. And sometimes harshly, probably more harshly than a certain segment of this audience would want. But the problem that you have if you are, you're positioned at a place where like your brand was just associated at attacking Democrats during the Trump administration is that like, what's your selling point now? Do you know what I mean? Like not like. I'm much more comfortable attacking Democrats when they're not in power because, when they're in power, because that's when it counts. And so to a certain extent, we're all on a similar playing field at this point. And I think, part of like people are trying to figure out like where they're going to position and that's part of what's going on. But yes, I hope it's always been my contention that the left grows more under a Democratic administration than it does under a Republican one, because, we're going to see where it's going to be things get a lot clearer when it's just the Democrats in control. And we're going to know exactly why this bill gets watered down. It's not going to be because, Susan Collins. It's going to be because of a specific Democrat. Or Democrats.
Yeah, concession made. That's a good point.
Appreciate the call, Keith.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
He lied about the dad thing. I don't know what he's talking about. Medical malpractice. That doesn't.
Maybe he didn't lie. Maybe it was another Seder.
There's a lot of Seders who are lawyers.
It's anti-Semitic.
I don't think that's where he was going. I don't think that's where he was going. It's possible. Should we look at the meet Madison Cawthorn video?
Okay.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to set this up? Meet the latest fascist every minute a fascist is born or something? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and the next flavor of fascist.
Yep. Hey,
you have a little bit behind the fascist.
Real world fascism.
Like VH1. That's what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's check it out. This is, and Kevin McCarthy's rolling out, does he introduce this baby? Here we go.
He posted them.
Oh, okay, he posted.
My name is Madison Cawthorn. I represent the mountains in western North Carolina. And I'll say it's probably the prettiest district in the entire country. It's North Carolina's 11th district. Best people in the world, best food in the world. You guys should come visit.
What's
your morning routine?
I normally wake up, have coffee right away. That's a big one for me. Out of a French press. It's so delicious. And then I play with my dog for a little bit, do a devotional, normally do a quick workout in the morning. And then after that, I just go over my schedule for the day and get to it.
What was your first concert?
I don't remember exactly who it was, but I can tell you it was definitely country, because that is just the music of America.
If you wrote a book, who would the dedication go to?
It would definitely go to my sweet wife, Christina Cawthorn. She's the best.
Before this election, what has been your greatest victory?
Before this election, my greatest victory, I would say it's learning to be able to live again in a wheelchair. I was one of the most injured people to ever survive a car accident in Florida. Had my entire life ripped away from me, spine destroyed, organs ripped off, severe internal bleeding, awful third-degree burns. It was a trying time, but you know what? If you stick to it and you know that the good times don't always last, but also know that the bad times won't last, you can turn really any obstacle into a stepping stone. I think that's what we were able to do.
Okay, so you like to cook, right?
That's my favorite thing to do, yeah.
So what is your specialty, and then what do you think your wife thinks is your favorite specialty?
So my specialty, without a doubt, is cooking a big, thick ribeye on a green egg in the backyard. But my wife would probably think that my specialty is making a rack of lamb on the backyard, which is more fun to cook, but I like steak more.
Trying trying to do like a Now This style. Let's meet the politician.
Green egg. You know how much those things are?
I don't know.
Do you know what that is?
It's like more in the PlayStation 5, I think.
Oh, green.
That's what's his name? Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg loves it. Yeah.
Special like barbecue. The thing costs like $1,500.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
I've actually eaten a steak off one. It was
good.
It was pretty good, I gotta say.
I like how he says he represents the mountains, like taking the Republicans represent land kind of thing a little bit literal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know he likes to look at things from on high. He likes perches, right? Where birds can look down, and I'm trying to transition to the Hitler's Eagle's Nest.
Oh, there you go. The Eagle's Nest. There's the Cawthorn. Let's see the other. Do we have other ones that are? I mean, this is really. They're trying. This whole thing is like we're. Oh, who's this guy? Oh, there's the Eagle's Nest. House of the Fuhrer. Seeing the Eagle's Nest has been on my bucket list for a while. Did not disappoint. Strange to hear so many laughs and share a good time with my brother. We're only 79 years ago. Supreme Evil shared laughs and good times with his compatriots. That is a very odd way of talking about that.
Yeah, you might want to bring up the context of his leadership, but sure, it just was a beautiful moment for him and his brother to go there.
There's the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah.
My bucket list.
It's on my bucket list. That was on my bucket list.
Weird how they didn't choose to bring any of that stuff up in his
who's
little
your favorite?
fun
and hey, while we're doing Cawthorn, Representative Mary Miller, she's also the newest one. She she was at a rally. Which rally was this? This is
This was like the day before.
Yeah, this is the day before rally. And she said, Hitler was right about one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future. Now,
yep.
I should just tell you, if you're
Does she mean whoever has the youth has the Fuhrer?
Yeah, if you're doing public speaking, and Emma, I'll give you this tip too. If you need to express a fairly, benign idea, or one that's maybe not necessarily profound, like the idea like the youth is our future. Like people say that. That's that's like a bumper sticker. Find somebody else besides Hitler to quote on that.
She could have quoted Whitney Houston if she wanted to.
She could have quoted. She probably didn't even have to quote anybody. This is not like one of those things like I need to appeal to authority.
Right.
Yeah, well, the thing about children is they have more of the future to live in. So like it kind of has always been true.
It's kind of implied.
Let's go to her cool behind the scenes thing. We're gonna get the youth vote this year because of these.
My name is Mary Miller. I represent the Illinois 15. We're a district that is rich in resources. We have salt of the earth people, a lot of best farmland in the world, coal and oil, educational institutions.
So what is your morning routine?
I'm a high energy person, so it doesn't take me long to wake up, but I have to have my coffee. I read my Bible, and every now and then I get called out to help move cattle from pasture to pasture or something on the farm that might be an emergency.
It's like a sheepdog?
What was your first concert?
Beach Boys.
If you wrote a book, who would the dedication go to?
If I wrote a book, I would dedicate it to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who called me out of darkness into his marvelous light.
Oh boy.
Election, what has been your greatest victory?
Well, raising my family. I'm the mom of 7 and grandma of 17. And all of our children and their spouses are all committed conservatives, hardworking, making a positive contribution to our society.
As a mother of 7 and grandmother of 17, what are you fighting for hardest in Congress to give to the next generation?
Well, I believe this is a pivotal point in our country, and I want our children and grandchildren, number one, to recognize the country we grew up in. I want them to have access to the same opportunities that we've had. I want our children to have freedom.
Yes, Deutschland. I just can't help it. Like I think she deserves a kudos for not having to rely on Hitler for any of those answers.
Right. Well, she'll rely on Hitler when she has to give a speech, right? When she has to demonstrate historical knowledge and, as you said, appeal to authority. But there. She was just trying to appeal to the regular person, you know?
Ask me what my morning routine is.
Sam, what do you do when you wake up in the morning?
Well, like Hitler, I wake up in the morning and I drink some coffee. And like Hitler, I have breakfast. And then just like Hitler did, I would have lunch later in the day.
Holy
Sometimes
shit.
I would skip it.
I
and
really
then
believe you now.
Later at night,
I didn't before.
I would, like Hitler, have dinner.
I didn't before.
Yeah,
but now that you compared it to that very strong authority of Hitler, you know, he spoke with authority.
Yeah, no, it's true. I just never occurred to me to eat dinner. And then I was like, well, Hitler did, so I should.
Yeah, Hitler was right about one thing. Your entire family, you should make sure that they're conservative and are contributing to society.
Yes.
No,
They're all contributing to society.
That's how normal people talk about their family.
Yeah.
Matt, your point about their like landowning resources, like opening remarks, was pretty spot on.
It's like they can't help it. Like they have to list 5 things about their district, and it's all like the natural resources and topography.
It's not the people; it's what can be extracted from there. We could do mountaintop removal in my district. That's good, and also there's a huge amount of money that belongs in the coffers of the fossil fuel industry, and that's under our land too. Oh, and
that's the type of meetings they take.
We have some human beings there.
Yeah. They make fun of the fact that, you know, whatever the Squad and Nancy Pelosi get the Hollywood treatment on Vanity Fair or whatever magazine that they're on, and yet they try to replicate it at every turn they do.
Oh, my God, it is so sad. It really is. But there it is. Call from a 978 area code. 978. You know who else used to answer the phone?
Who?
Hitler.
Right. I believe that he did.
978. Did they make it in? I'm waiting. No, didn't do it. Let's see what happened. I lost them now. Lost them.
Just like Hitler lost his life.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. There's 541. We'll give him one more chance. 541. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Samantha, and I'm calling from Vancouver, Washington.
Samantha from Vancouver, Washington. Welcome to the program, Samantha.
Thank you. Just want to say off the bat, love the show. Been listening for, I think, I can't believe it's been this long, but 2.5, 3 years now.
Wow.
And really love Michael. Miss him a lot. Emma, I've been watching you since you were going around the country doing the, where is the middle class thing for TYT.
Yeah.
That was really amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that what I really wanted to focus on was basically the conversation centered around COVID is a lot about the vaccine rollout right now, and I really respect that. I support people getting the vaccine. But something that I think is missing from the conversation is metabolic health, and how the pharmaceutical companies, or industry rather, and food industry affect and have been affecting the nation's health, world health, with money, lobbying, food deserts, things like that, have really affected the health of our communities, especially, obviously, communities of color. And I've seen, various communities of color, but specifically Native communities, talking about indigenous farming practices, also regenerative agriculture. And I just wish that we could maybe talk about the health of our country, or food production rather, maybe more localized food production, as being a valid resource for helping people during COVID. Because if you have a healthier population, we can mitigate problems like these in the future. If we have another, you just had that virologist on to talk about the vaccine.
Yeah.
And there's supposed to be another pandemic at some point. We don't know if it'll be another COVID strain.
Right.
But yeah, I think that needs to be part of the money that our government allocates to different communities is
I mean, I will
health,
say
nutrition.
that the topic in general definitely interests me, and I think we certainly, if you go back and search the archives during the Obama years, it was something that we would talk about a lot more, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, both ends of that, right? I mean, both from sort of problems with pharmaceuticals, but also in terms of farming practices and policies and food supply. And I suspect that we will. I mean, I think that the fact is that I think there's obviously we have if you were to reverse the decision about corn, right, that we made in this country 40 years ago, where the Commerce Secretary under Nixon was like, we're going to subsidize the hell out of corn. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually lower the cost of food for people because, a big portion of what they'll be eating will not actually be food. It will be sort of processed. It'll be processed, and a lot of it will be filler from corn. Also, we'll provide a lot of feed for cattle, and it's going to lower the price of meat and this and that, and it's going to allow for people to have more disposable income, which of course they're going to end up spending on healthcare. Is really basically what it comes down to. But yes, I think it is less likely that people are going to pay attention to it in the course of during a pandemic. Than they will when we get to the other side of this. And, and frankly, I mean, the reality is that I think that I think what we're going to have to ultimately do, frankly, is we're going to be developing our food. It's going to have to be constructed in laboratories on some level. I mean, ultimately, because of global climate change. And, I think that's, where we're headed, but I think people need to have an understanding of what constitutes food and the idea that people live in food deserts. I mean, it's definitely a topic that we talked. You can go back and see that, and I imagine it's going to come back around. I mean, once we get on the other side of this pandemic. I mean, I just don't think at this stage, honestly, I go up to people and say, look, the key is we need to be healthier as a population. And I think at this point, people, honestly, in terms of what their tolerance level would be like, yeah, that's great. I'm going to drink right now. I'm going to have a drink because I can't deal with this pandemic. I mean, I think that's honestly I think people are just at their wit's end to a certain extent. But I definitely, it's something I think once we get on the other side of this is going to be, building the resilience of our society. And a big part of that is going to be we need to have a better healthcare system. I mean, the fact of the matter is I'm not convinced that, that having Medicare for all would dramatically have impacted, healthcare, outcomes in the context of COVID when you had a Donald Trump as president, because the bottom line is he was just they were pursuing a herd strategy, a herd immunity strategy, which basically has created a petri dish for deviation, for mutations and whatnot. But to build an infrastructure, the mechanical infrastructure where you have the ability to deliver and to have people into a system that is comprehensive and cohesive, with the right administration, and it really, frankly, a wide range of presidents who would not think it's a plandemic, essentially. That's the way you build resiliency. You build resiliency for COVID, I think just as important even as Medicare for all in the context of COVID specifically, a federal unemployment system that could actually deliver checks to people easily, like you see in a place like Canada, that would have kept people even more healthy, right? Like, here's money. Stay at home. We're not going to, quibble about whether or not it's safe for you at work. We're deeming it unsafe. Here's money. I mean, I think, like, I agree with what you're talking about. I just think that, like, timing's everything to a certain extent. But I appreciate
I understand that. Yeah, thank you. If I could just make one last point, the fact that comorbidity is such an important aspect of this virus and like how it is affecting our population, like just as it relates to what I've said, I just hope that people maybe do some research or look into like why does our population have these high numbers of comorbidities, and it's because of our food system. And so, but thank you so much for taking my call. I love you guys so much.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thanks so much.
No, that's absolutely the case. And I would also add, though, you can also track, again, like everything else in this country, show me the zip code, tell me what the median income is in that zip code, and I will be able to tell you with a, 75%, 85% accuracy rate, whether they are above or below the median mortality rate during COVID. Because the fact of the matter is that in poorer parts of this country, you have less hospitals, you have less well-equipped hospitals, you have people who have less access to getting in there, and that's what happened in this city. A lot of your deaths, you just look at the difference, like the chances of you dying if you're living in a lower income part of the city, much higher than higher. Part of it is comorbidities. Part of it is you've got to work. You've got to travel to work. You don't have the luxury of working at home. You don't have the luxury of saying to your boss, like, I'm not coming in. And because of the quality of the hospitals, or because there's no hospital there. So, this is some good news coming out about ICE. We're going to need more time, and I'm going to want to hear from folks like Ronald Reagan, who has obviously clients who deal with ICE all the time. But and I think we'll get into this a little bit more tomorrow. But according to early policy pronouncements and reporting, Washington Post reports that you've got people at ICE who are complaining like, we didn't get abolished, but it's like we've been functionally abolished.
Oh.
Because we don't have the discretion to roll up on moms and kids anymore in the way that we used to. Now we got to go after people who are actual dangers to society.
Damn, our kidnapping capabilities are being rolled back?
It's no more like wait for people to go and deal with a court case because they're getting abused in a domestic abuse situation. We can't go roll up on that woman.
Damn, the human rights, it's just such an obstacle to us feeling powerful.
Here is Brian Kilmeade, Fox and Friends.
MVP of bad takes, maybe, honestly.
He's up there. And he is championing the plight of poor ICE agents who don't have the ability to target people who are just maybe working, helping the community, just living their lives. Here's Brian Kilmeade.
But now, a look at ICE and the reorientation of ICE has many concerns, especially those people on ICE who go out and try to round up people, criminals who snuck in here illegally, especially those who have committed crimes. Now, according to
Pause it. Round up criminals. Now, he has to put in that little clarification there, like, particularly ones who have actually committed violent crimes. The zero tolerance policy that Biden reversed, one of the impacts it has is that it does not allow CBP, Customs Border, CBP agents to separate children from their parents. And the idea is this, is that like it is a civil violation to cross the border. When you criminalize it and make it something other than that, cross the border without documentation. When you make it something other than that, when you make it the equivalent of committing a crime like selling illicit materials or
assault
or something like that, then you can separate the children. That's what they wanted to do. Well, it was also the case that ICE used to have as its focus prosecutorial discretion. We're going to focus on people who are here without documents, who have committed what we all consider to be a crime, like they've stolen something, or they've assaulted someone, or they've carried a handgun and not supposed to, or they've sold drugs, or whatever it is. Whatever is a actual crime that, let's say, an American citizen could commit. And in the course of doing that, they are functioning like police do, and they're getting violent criminals off the street, ostensibly. And now they're being told, you got to go back to that. You got to go back to that's where you're going to focus, not on just rounding up people.
Yeah, but we got a taste of unlimited power. And so now Kilmeade is comparing their complaints about having their power kept in check so that they don't behave as some sort of Gestapo light to some sort of actually tangible and legitimate aggrievement.
Yeah, so let's hear Kilmeade.
He cares about big government.
He's carrying the torch.
Right, right.
Who go out and try to round up criminals who snuck in here illegally, especially those who have committed crimes. Now, according to the new ICE operational plan, they will no longer seek to deport immigrants for crimes such as driving under the influence, and assault, and will focus instead of national security threats and recent border crossers. There's a belief out there, according to a senior ICE official, that this Biden administration didn't even make this up. They had nothing to do with the decision. They said, speaking on a condition of anonymity, according to the Washington Post, the official said they had not heard about the operation, but that it was possible career staffers had planned it to set aside while evaluating new instructions from the Biden team. And I'll add this to it. They are now going to have to get permission from Washington to go and pick up some of these hoodlums who are nesting somewhere in this country. They can't go do it on their own, following their own leads. Can you imagine that? Having to call someone in Washington to tell them about how they're tracking down illegals here, drug traffickers, before they knock on their door?
You see how he conflates this stuff, right? At first, he says, like, they're rounding up people, criminals, especially the ones who've committed crimes. Oops. He's criminalizing people who are here without documentation, period. Now, those people are no more criminals than, I don't know, you are if you haven't paid your parking ticket. It's a civil offense. Or if you get a speeding ticket. You're actually less criminal probably than somebody who buys their pharmaceuticals from Canada.
Or, Rush Limbaugh.
Or Rush
Who was caught with...
Well, I mean, he was specifically trying to skirt.
Did he get deserved? Is he? Would they have? Did he get?
Was
deserved?
he nesting?
Right, exactly. I mean, should he be broken up from his family and separated from them for that very reason? I mean, that was his argument with the DUI. Really? That's what Kilmeade said.
Now, it's not to say that they don't go after people who go and get a DUI. They get arrested. They get tried, and they get exactly as you would if you were
deported.
It's just you don't bring in federal agents to deal with this.
I mean, and they may even get deported. I don't even know. I don't even think that's what Biden's saying. It's exactly what you're saying. ICE doesn't need to be involved. This shadowy federal agency that wasn't in existence before 9/11. And now the Republican media propaganda apparatus and Republican politicians and some Democrats, including Joe Biden, who isn't going to even actually abolish ICE, are pretending like this is some institution that was enshrined in the Constitution. Never forget how small people's imaginations are politically and how unwilling they will always be to roll back powers that were created. So that's why you have to be as careful as possible with the institutions that are established by the federal government. no matter who the leader is.
Here is here's Mike Lindell. He's still around.
Man.
Yep. Sorry. He's got some bad news for us, folks. I mean, I'd rather you hear it from me first than out on the streets.
Oh, Jesus Christ! What
Yep.
happened?
End times. End times. Yeah. Here is Mike Lindell talking to the currently being investigated Steve Bannon on the America's Voice News War Room Pandemic Real America's Voice. And here they are going at it with each other. And boy, I hate to be the one. Why don't you just?
I mean,
We're here for you.
You could have told me this off air, but
I probably should. I probably should have said I probably should have started with it's getting late. What do you mean? I mean, it's just like the time is late. What do you mean? It's not. Well, it's sort of like late, Andy. You know what I mean? Here you go.
Raheem had something to jump about. I got to ask this question first, Raheem. You went on a religious channel, a YouTube channel the other night, and said, hey, if this does not get vetted and not come up and we don't get to the bottom of this, this is going to start. I think you actually started talking about the end times. I just want to make sure you've got a couple of minutes here. Where do you think the country is? And if this is not vetted, because they're making it out like you're saying, hey, the world's going to end. What was your thoughts the other night, and what do you think is going to happen if this does not get vetted?
Well, I think we're going down a communist path. The socialism is coming in here. Everybody can look what happened in Nazi Germany. I mean, we're going down. It's happening so fast. When I see and experiencing the cancellation of people, canceling out people's jobs, they don't exist. When you take away all communication, this is like when you take away the communications, you take away anybody that can talk. Now it's this one world order. The stuff's in Revelation. That's what I was talking about. And you combine that with this vaccine that's Mark of the Beast stuff. I mean, this is horrible.
I want you to understand what's going on here. So Steve Bannon is bringing on this lunatic on. Now, Steve Bannon's sort of a lunatic too, but Steve Bannon's setting him up to look, you were on there and you were saying end times. I just want you to be able to clarify. You're not talking literally end times. You're saying this is really bad for the country. And then Lindell starts going into Revelation and talking about the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
So back it up a little bit.
The mark of the beast. And how many of these right-wingers try to give Mike Lindell an out? They give him a platform. Newsmax tries to do it every single time. Just talk about cancel culture. No. Dominion. No. Just talk about what's going to happen in the post-Trump world. End times. Mark of the beast. Bible. Fire.
Can I just note, with regards to Hitler, it was communists that defeated Nazi Germany in large part. So just to know.
Well,
that's inconvenient.
Oh, okay. Mr. History Guy. All right, you're going to do that. You're going to do one of those. Yeah, well.
It's the host of Literary Hangover, nerd.
Matt, why don't you, if you're so smart, why don't you tell us why we shouldn't be worried about cancel culture, considering that we're just this far away from Armageddon?
Yeah, you know how to, right? You read it in the Bible.
Go back and let's play this.
So fast when I see and experiencing the cancellation of people, canceling out people's jobs, they don't exist. When you take away all communication, this is like when you take away the communications, you take away anybody that can talk. Now it's this one.
Keep going. Sorry.
World order. The stuff's in Revelation. That's what I was talking about. And you combine that with this vaccine. That's Mark of the Beast stuff. I mean, this is horrible, keeping us indoors. I mean, I could do a whole nother show on just this China virus. I guess you're not supposed to say that. There's a thing out now. You're not supposed to say China virus.
By CCP virus, the Chinese Communist Party virus. Okay, so you go to My Pillow and use the code word proof real quickly. Raheem, only got a minute.
Mike,
Oh my God!
Use the promo code Mark of the Beast. Use the promo code Jesus was canceled.
Do you think this dude, first off, he's sitting there, he's going, you can't even go outside. He's outside. all communications cut off. The guy literally, is there a single human being who hasn't been more in being broadcast or narrowcast than Mike Lindell over the past 3 weeks?
I mean, his cable news hits is his new drug of choice.
Exactly. And the idea that that obviously cancel culture, biblical, we all know, I mean, that goes without saying, I think. But it's
the only time I've seen anything that crazy is the Mark of the Beast stuff. Is I went in college. I was going to write an article about it. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist. They had mass in a Holiday Inn for a week. Every night they had a headline event, and it drew my attention because the pamphlet had Obama with 666 on his forehead.
Of course,
and that's just what this is, right? This is Obama. There's all these different signs that point to Revelation and all that stuff, and people's brains are just wrapped up in it.
Let's play this clip from former QAnon supporter. Her name is Melissa Rain Lively, and she gives us a sense of who these people are and what they're about.
And it's heartbreaking. It gives me chills just thinking about it, because I know that these people have to be empowered to make the conscious choice to leave the cult themselves. The more that people, berate them, call them names, call them stupid, laugh at them, mock them, they are just going to dig their heels in harder and become more isolated, more scared, and more alone. So my advice is to love these people, understand these people, try to come to even ground and reason with them as best you can, find things, common ground, things that you can agree on, and start there and really try to isolate what their fears are and what's motivating the irrational behavior and obsession with QAnon, because what you'll probably find out, it is motivated by fear, distrust, uncertainty, not necessarily hatred, not necessarily destruction, but these people can be helped, but they have to be empowered to do so.
Well, not necessarily.
I don't necessarily know if I agree, but I do hear what she's saying in that shaming them I don't think is effective. You see, the hallmark of cults is that they try to be incredibly insular, and any outside attack is seen as an affront. But you and I just are more focused on what tangibly can be done, right? As opposed to coming to people with love. It's just these social media companies that profited off of sharing this nonsense at an insane, inordinate rate need to be broken up. I mean, that's a huge part of what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think on an individual basis, the idea of coming at people with understanding and this and that is obviously the best way to if you're working to sort of deprogram them. And I do believe, I think saying it's not necessarily about hate and this and that, I think it's probably accurate. It's not necessarily. I think that I think there is a certain amount of racism, frankly, that is, and misogyny maybe at times that is in that, in the makeup of a decent amount of those people. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the majority of them, maybe not. I don't know. But there's no doubt that the same fear that she's talking about breeds that racism and that hatred. It is a fear of marginity. I know maybe I'm mispronouncing that word.
No, I think it was right.
Marginity, and also a fear of things that they don't know, like different people and different cultures, and the idea that they have no control in their lives, and that control is of not just of a financial thing. I mean, we've seen analysis of QAnon. They're not. You're looking at a lot of college educated people, a lot of people who are relatively speaking, are doing well. It is a fear, I still contend, that it is a fear of, and people can call it economic anxiety. I'm sure there's some of that, but it's really a fear, I think, of an anxiety that is born about less control over the culture and society.
Well, and powerlessness, right? And then when you're on Facebook and you're seeing videos that constantly validate your view, and you have this special knowledge that you're the one that's able to connect these things, it makes you feel special, and then that dovetails with like the overlap with what you're seeing with a lot of this evangelical ideology. An obsessive focus on children, pedophilia, abortion, this religious figure, the shadowy person Q, aka Jesus Christ, who's giving people directions and signs. There's so much of that, and then that also ties into what you're saying, where there's these latent, if not sometimes explicit, cultural anxiety factors that's a part of Christianity. That's just Christian conservatism that's just gotten more extreme with this and more radicalized siloed on Facebook.
But ultimately, what is that fear of pedophilia and that fear and the issues of abortion? That is again a fear of the emancipation of women, that a change in the social status.
How is pedophilia that?
I've talked about this. There was a great piece that I interviewed them on Ring of Fire. It came out of in the 80s when there was a sort of I don't want to say explosion, but in the wake of the emancipation of women in this country in the 70s, you started to see a lot of daycare centers that came up because women are starting to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where a lot of the pedophilia ring stuff started, where there was a lot of people who were accused of committing pedophilia who were running these daycare centers.
You did say this on the show.
And it is a second order, third order response to the idea of women not staying at home, going out and working, the kids being raised, at a daycare center, as opposed to a woman who is at home instead of going into the workforce. And that dynamic, that is where why are the children not safe? Because the mothers are not there protecting them. The mothers are out and they're trying to be business ladies.
Yeah, but there's a lot of female Q viewer or Q obsessive women, but that's because they're a part of that evangelical Christian culture of like women in the home.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So I see now what you're saying.
Yeah, they're worried about that infrastructure crumbling, and that is a second order sign of it, right?
Yeah.
The kids go to daycare center. That means that the mom is not at home. She's at work.
And the Epstein story validated it. And then you're able to say, oh, it's Podesto, it's Hillary Clinton, or it's whatever. And then
once you go down that wormhole, things get a little bit dark.
But and then if it's pedophilia, which is the worst possible thing that you can associate with anybody, that makes the figures in power even shadowier, and it also makes your blind devotion to this cause that much more righteous, which just brings me back to a feeling of power in a society that they feel is culturally slipping away from them. And then also, it's almost like a feeling of powerlessness that you can mainline into yourself by videos on the internet and information there. You don't have to go to a rally. You can feel individually special and making a difference in society from the comfort of your own home watching something on a computer.
All right, the final IM of the day is coming from an 847 area code. Not the IM, phone call. 847, who's this?
Hey, it's Sam. Am I on?
Yeah, it's you. Who's this?
Hi, this is John from Maryland.
John from Maryland. I couldn't have picked a better sounding phone connection.
Oh my gosh. All right. So the first thing I wanted to say after the Madison Cawthorn thing, that guy said wife a lot, but he is not married. They are getting married on April 3rd, but he is not married yet. Apparently he's been saying this for quite a while to improve the image. So
that's so creepy.
Fair enough.
Very.
Fair enough.
I mean, maybe she'll Naval Academy him and pull the plug at the last minute. So
I would love that. I mean, sorry, just kidding.
Yeah. So the second thing, I've been trying to call in for a little while. Sorry about that. Basically, I live in Maryland, and I hate Larry Hogan. He's probably going to run for president here in 2024, and he is a complete racist. Something to Google to talk about at some point is him and the Blue Lives Matter flag. He hung a couple in like the Secret Service mansion or something in Maryland here, and it's terrible. Basically in response to some kid trying to gift a Blue Lives Matter flag to a police station, and county executive realizing that was a bad idea and saying, hey, we shouldn't hang that up. He turned around and doubled down and said it was awesome, and here's a picture of me with them. So
right.
He's awful.
Yeah. Anything else? What else you got?
Yeah, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was I haven't heard a lot out of like Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro regarding Marjorie Taylor Greene, like defense. And I'm kind of wondering what do you think will push those like young, conservatives over the edge to really get on her side, because she's like Trump's number one thing that he wants to make happen next, right? She's the only person that he brought on stage to talk with him, that he didn't like try to shoo off the stage, right? So, what point do the young conservatives really kind of jump on her train? Is it when she gets expelled from Congress, or, something else? Just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think we're going to get a better sense of where everybody's going to go after the impeachment is over, right? And because then Donald Trump has really sort of exited the scene. The tough part with Marjorie Greene Taylor is that she's, nobody's going to be terribly interested in her, at least in the mainstream, because she's not even on any committees. She doesn't really have an opportunity to do anything. But with that said, I don't know. Kirk will be the first one. I guarantee you. He will. If he thinks there's a buck there, he'll be right there.
I think Shapiro is going to be a little less down for it because it doesn't fit with his "I'm an intellectual."
Shapiro was always more skeptical of it was a stolen election thing, and also Steven Crowder has been distancing himself from the dumber election was stolen conspiracy theorists like Green and Lynn, whatever that guy's name is. So I think. I don't think like Crowder, for instance, I don't expect him to try to sell Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah, thanks.
We didn't pull that Dave Rubin tweet where he's like he's like almost like, I think that dude, I don't know how he's going to do, like he's getting all into the sort of like the secular humanist thing. He's like getting like into Bill O'Reilly territory.
Yeah, didn't he say something recently about how Jesus was always surrounded by Muslims?
Oh, that's not recent. That was from years ago. Yeah,
that's a really good one.
No, but he has gone from like, he sort of like found his politics through like the new atheists, and now he's like coming around to really bemoan the secularism.
Yeah. Because he's pissed off at Sam Harris and all the other guys because they think he's an idiot. It used to be we were in Dave Rubin's head, but it's clear that it's those older. When he's talking about those lefties that he has disagreements with, it's like Sam Harris now.
Yeah,
it's fucking fascinating. I mean, honestly, it's really wonderful to see. Like this guy is going to go. He's so hurt. He's so hurt by it that like I feel like, honestly. I mean, he's either going to just get out of this like whole racket, although like he's got such a sweet house, like I don't know where he goes, or I'm
got to pay the mortgage.
I'm convinced that like, and somebody put down a marker. Where are we? 2021. By 2028, I'm going to say Rubin is either like some type of like Jew for Jesus or like full on Christian, and has
he was always that was the whole schism with TYT was the Israel defense. So he's not, I don't know if he's Christian or Jewish, but
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's Jewish, Dave Rubin, I would imagine. At least he was probably born that way. But he's going to become religious conservative, and of course that's going to mean reparative therapy. Is that what they call it? Reparative therapy?
Oh.
I mean, the conversion is going to be...
Mom! Why did you do that to me?
That is that back in 2004 when I started doing radio, the gay conversion therapy was like in full swing, and that guy would provide gay conversion therapy, and it was taking a tennis racket and smacking a couch.
I remember that video.
There you go.
I do.
Folks, that is it for the call-in portion of our program today. We will have more time to take your phone calls tomorrow because we're going to do news, and we'll get some of the news out of the way, and then when we get into the fun half, we'll be able to do more phone calls, and that's just the way that we
It's
roll.
just me and Sam for the 2 hour 45 minutes tomorrow.
Oh, is Nomi not around?
Oh, right. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Jesus.
Pep on the Road. Have you discussed the Molly Ball article in Time magazine from last week entitled The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election about Mike Podhorzer and the Democracy Defense Coalition? What are your thoughts? I haven't read that. I have that picked out to check it out. I will check it out. Odd job. You can't hit me, Sam. You should have picked rockets only. Instead, you went with slappers only. I don't know what that means.
That's a GoldenEye reference. Slappers only is no guns. You just have to run around slapping.
Odd job. Of course. Of course. Of course.
They actually remastered GoldenEye, Sam. It's available on PC. I haven't played it yet, but it has new graphics and everything.
Same game?
That's what I understand.
Graphics were so amazing at that time. Jonathan Armstead, yo, Sam, what's going on with Bobby Kennedy Jr.? Have you talked to him in a bit? He's been going on these rants saying that COVID vaccines should be treated with skepticism because we don't know the full risk. The dude used to be my hero, and now I worry about him. Years ago, it's been a long time since I've talked to Bobby. And I had some, I think, on-air conversations about his anti-vaxism, as it were. And, and all I can tell you is that he genuinely believes in it, and he knew that it was going to sort of in some way impact his credibility with a lot of people, and he just felt it was the right thing to do. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I feel the exact same way. I don't know what to say. I mean, there has been a tremendous amount of data at this point in terms of the safety of the vaccine, at least within, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. It's conceivable, I guess, theoretically, that down the road, but that's usually when you have a reaction to a vaccine, it would happen much sooner than that. It's certainly, we have clear evidence of the danger of COVID. 450,000 deaths in this country.
It's weird that anti-vaxxers focus a lot on dangers of vaccines and not on dangers of disease.
I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, believe me, it's.
And look, there's like we always say this about anti-vaxxers or any conspiracy theory. Oftentimes, not every, but in some conspiracy theories, it stems from a legitimate skepticism about moneyed and powerful institutions, and then it goes too far.
Without a doubt. I mean, look, he has functioned as a tort attorney. He is aware of like horrible things that companies have done. Pharmaceutical companies, industrial companies, in terms of what they've done to the environment, no doubt in my mind. I also suspect that over the years, there's been a lot of people who have come to him with varying theories about what had happened to his father and to his uncle. And I would imagine those theories also make you your perception of what these companies and certain people are capable of. I would imagine that sets a certain specific tone. So, but Phil from Boston, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Like it. Like the stream right now.
Do it.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Get us to 1776 likes for Madison Cawthorn.
How are you counting?
I'm pretending to count all the likes, even though obviously this wouldn't show
Oh,
up
I was
in the
saying,
stream.
like, wait, can you see that? How do you see that?
It was fake. I acted.
Betty liked it. Kevin, Peter, Mary.
It's just like, what is this? This is like what's it called? Archie comics?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Like, yeah, it's boomer names. P word. When do you guys think you will get vaccinated? My understanding is that 1C in New York State is media.
I just tried to look that up and I'm not seeing it.
It's not there yet. Have you looked up 1C?
I did, but okay.
Oh, it's not available yet.
No, I know. Phase. I'm literally have this tab here. Phased 1C. Okay, it's not up. Shoot.
Yeah, I mean, we're not available. I mean, I think my guess would be March, April, May. I would say May. May, I'll get the first shot. That's my guess. May. I know a lot of people, though, who've gotten shots.
Yeah, I mean...
1C likely to start May, April 2021, likely includes other at-risk groups and all other essential workers.
Right. So I didn't see... I looked up what you said about 1C on the CDC website, and communications is there, but I didn't see... I don't know if New York is classifying that, but I don't know.
I'm quite convinced I've seen it in New York, but maybe not.
No, yeah, I trust you. I'm hopeful. I'm just like, tempering my own expectations.
Stacy Wolf. Football is a team sport, and teams that have Tom Brady as their QB have won 7 Super Bowls. Probably a total coincidence. Boom. Boom. My border collie named Sam. The bars were packed with maskless jackasses all around Tampa for days. Super Bowl or super spreader? Shane from Canada. I think the analogy that works is that we just got through a Category 4. The wind is dying down and things are looking okay, but now we have a Category 5 coming. Check out the Stop Swapping Air campaign at CIDRAP. It covers best practices for aerosols. Oh, that's pretty good. Rabbit from Boston. Loved the GoldenEye reference, Sam. Coincidentally, I was playing Nintendo games while listening to that interview. Marcos Alonso, is there any knowing what percentage of new COVID cases are the new variants and when they are projected to become the main strain? My understanding is that the scientists think that by the end of March, the majority of cases that are new are going to be the UK strain. The strain from UK.
B117.
B117, thank you. The problem is we have such crappy tracing and we're not following that stuff just as a country. EMAS special sheets. Can you just play devil's advocate and list some of the possible downsides to ending the filibuster? Democrats lose the Senate in 2 years. Republicans win the Senate, and if they end up winning the House and the presidency, they can pass laws that are incredibly draconian. That's the downside. And then the downside is that the American public, we find out, are actually, the majority of which are horrible, and they're all in favor of those laws. Emma's bookie. Emma, I told you if you wanted to pay off that student debt, you needed to bet it on Brady and the Bucks. Damien.
I made a bet. I regret my bet. It was bad.
Do IMs that are sent before you turn them on show up? We have the ability to IM once you are live, and often the guest inspires some thoughts and questions. Right now, we're having a problem seeing IMs until I load up my particular machine as opposed to our other things. So we got to fix that. Atheism brought me to leftism, and then leftism got to sort of me stop caring about atheism so much. But some of these Christian dominionists, maniacs, are really making me want to listen to some more Matt Dillahunty right now. The muscular class, loving the episode so far. Great interview. Don't care about the football talk, however. Left is best.
I recognize that. I've asked,
Of course.
We didn't even have one caller call in to shit on me, and that's fine.
I mean, when people are like, I like your 3-hour show, but I didn't like that 7 minutes today. So, you know what?
Don't get triggered, either people. Stay up.
My Bloomberg impression. If poor people are so great, why don't they have any money? Teacher in Czech Republic. Hey, thanks for the great interviews. And so now I'm really pissed off about people saying the schools should reopen. These new variants are spreading faster and people younger than 20 are spreading it. It sounds even more dangerous to send the kids back. You need to have teachers. I don't know why teachers aren't the first people, frankly, after people over the age of 70. People over the age of 70, healthcare workers, teachers. That's the way I would do it.
Yep.
But, Ren Boucher 2024. Hey, Sam, longtime lurker, first-time poster. Saw Dan Crenshaw as a podcast now and is platforming Ben Shapiro. Is this the final stage of right-wing talk radio where every rep and senator is also a talk personality? Thanks. Mike Pence started his career as a talk radio host. So
that's the singularity.
He's
exactly.
so charismatic.
Reagan was an actor.
Yeah. Nothing changes. 4 more. Shore Rap, using individual achievements in any team sport, especially one with significant rule changes over the decades, almost exclusively benefiting QBs in the passing game, is ridiculous. This Brady worship that the sports media and the league fans have been doing for almost 20 years borders on zealotry. That's absurd.
No, it's not.
No, that assertion is absurd. The guy has been in half of the Super Bowls. He has won a significant portion of that. He's not the highest paid in the league. He's not even the second or third or fourth or fifth highest paid in the league.
Well, I know, but he took a lot of pay cuts under Belichick, not out of the goodness of his MAGA heart. Well, I know, I'm breaking my own rule. But because he wanted them to field a competitive roster, and he knew that Belichick might say, get out.
Yeah,
I have to check you on this Super Bowl stat you keep throwing around. How many Super Bowls has Tom Brady been in?
10 Super Bowls.
He's been in 10. He's been in the league for 20 years.
20 years.
You said, I thought you said he was in half of the Super Bowls.
Half of the Super Bowls since he's been in the league.
Yeah.
He was not in the Super Bowl when he was 7. Come on, Brett.
No, when he scored 13 points against the Rams, it was Brady that just took him over the edge there.
Well, I don't know. It was Brady who got that last minute score at the end of the game last night, like with those pass interference calls. That was all Brady. I mean, I don't like Tom Brady, but I think, Emma, you're way overextended on this, frankly.
No, I
Whoa!
Look, I recognize it's not a popular opinion. I just think that there is a conflation of, say, like a Michael Jordan influence on the Bulls team versus a Tom Brady influence on a Pats team that also went 11-5 when he tore.
Well, on that note, Scotty's underrated too, but I mean that's another conversation.
The real ace attorney, the Mahomes mid-dive throw, 30 yards down the field line, straight into his receiver's face mask, was one of the most impressive throws I've ever seen. Emma's right. He's more talented than Brady ever was, and let down by huge drops and wet toilet paper O-line last night.
I know we got to go, but his 30-yard dropbacks don't work against defensive linemen that are that fast. That was a problem for him all night. And you can find, like, Brett Coleman has a football YouTube that shows, actually that's like, it might look fun, but teams are actually starting to react to that and be able to contain Mahomes a little bit. And that's what
too is Bulls only blitzed on like less than 10% of what they did defensively. They changed up their entire defense strategically. They didn't bring extra defensive linemen at all last night.
Right, because they have Pierre-Paul and like their amazing D-line, and that's all you need is just run down the field when he does those 30-yard dropbacks. I didn't
think he played amazingly. I'm just trying to say that it's obvious who's the better quarterback at this point in their career, and it just goes to show that it's not all about the quarterback. So, yes, I understand that Brady, a lot of people are going to say he's the greatest of all time. I think he's in the top 3, and I think that there's an overemphasis on him as a personality and being the dominant force behind a lot of those Super Bowl wins. Like 3 of them, he was the best player on the field, but not all of them. So, and not last night either. So,
dictator. 2 more. Dictatorship. The proletariat. Hey Sam, what do you think about the strategy for progressives to focus on black issues like reparations, etc., to win the Democratic primary? Bernie's biggest weakness was black people in the South. Essentially, focus on black issues in the primary and switch to universal policies in the general. Personally, I am supportive of reparations. I am not convinced, but I don't know any data on this. I am not convinced that a candidate in the primary who pushes reparations is going to like win that cohort of black voters in the South. Because I just don't know. It's possible, but I think there's a dynamic. I mean, maybe as frankly, like the cohort of black voters under the age of 40 get older, maybe that would work. But I think broadly speaking, yes, in the primary, you need to be responsive to black voters. And I don't know if reparations is necessarily the thing to do, because I think that might scare some black voters. It depends on the context too, right? Like with Donald Trump, I think the reason why Joe Biden did so well with black voters was like they thought he was the safest pick, the most amenable probably to white people. And that dynamic might change if you're not as worried about the Democratic nominee winning or losing. But broadly speaking, in general, yes. I think you need to develop relationships with the core voters of the Democratic primary base, and that is black people, and particularly black women. And so I'm not sure. I don't know if reparations is. I haven't seen like the data on this enough, but that needs to be your strategy, I think. All right. Well, final IM of the day. Hey, Sam, with so many Charlie Kirk's punchable face. Hey, Sam, with so many great left-wing publications like The Nation in these times, etc., how do you find the time to read everything or digest everything you read? Thanks for the show. I never do. I'm constantly struggling to do that. That is it. It's like me and not eating cookies. It's a constant struggle.
Yeah. Sam, I just want everyone to know, blamed me because I only ate 2 cookies out of the available 4.
Two cookies,
and
right
then
there.
he goes, it's like it's before noon. I've eaten 2.
I can't.
And it's
eat
my
them.
fault.
I can't not eat them
somehow.
Folks, Matt, Brendan, Emma, great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow